Welcome, everyone. This is your friend here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If I Became the Spectacular Spider-Man? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Bullet. Alleyway. Me on the ground. Blood everywhere. You can probably piece together what happened. I was walking down the aforementioned alleyway on the way back to my dorm when I got cornered by a sketchy-looking dude with wild hair and alcohol on his breath. He took out his pistol and asked me for my wallet. I tossed him my wallet. Not that I had much in it, maybe 50 or 60 bucks at the most. The guy looked at the wallet and said, "Don't F with me, man. I know you've got more on you." I tried to explain how I was a broke college student and didn't have anything else. I turned out my pockets to prove it, but he still wasn't buying it. I was starting to panic now. I didn't have any more money, but he wasn't letting me go. At that moment, I saw a police car drive by the entrance of the alley. "Hey, help me!" I yelled out. Thankfully, I got their attention. The robber was startled by my call for help. He turned around to see who I was calling to, and seeing it was the police, tried to run past me. I stepped to my left to avoid him, but unfortunately, he decided to go around my left to pass me. He ended up colliding with me and accidentally fired his gun. The bullet penetrated my chest. Jesus Christ, it hurt so bad. I fell to the ground, blood spilling out of my chest. The last thing I remember before I died was the sound of police sirens wailing, the guy who shot me cussing profoundly as he ran away. Being that I wasn't particularly religious, I hadn't expected anything to actually happen after I died. I was standing on the steps at the entrance of a large building, Columbia University in particular. My head was flooded with memories that weren't mine. This body certainly weren't mine. Neither was the camera around my neck or the glasses on my face. My days of reading fanfiction on the internet in my previous life had given me enough experience to realize what had happened. The fact that it had happened, on the other hand, was astonishing. Or maybe it was just that the Buddhists had been right all along. But that didn't really make sense in my case. My new memories told me that why would I be reborn as a teenager? I guess I should be kinda bummed out about the fact that I died, but honestly, I wasn't. My life SED. I had been a broke-butt college student, working 3 minimum wage jobs to get by. Estranged parents, no friends, and shitty grades only added to that. So, the chance to start over in a new world, hopefully a world where I can have superpowers, was exciting. I was on a school trip, and waiting for someone, my memories told me. A friend. So I had friends. Already off to a better start. "Hey Pete." I hear someone say behind me. I turn around to see a slightly taller guy my age. He had long brown hair and a grin on his face as he approached me. "Hiya, Harry," I say, recalling his name. This was the friend I was waiting for. So, my name was Peter and my best friend's name was Harry. "Aren't you gonna be needing this, Harry?" a voice said. Harry turned around. A 50-ish man, presumably his dad, was getting out of the back of a Bentley with Harry's backpack in his hand. He handed Harry the bag. He looks at me and then smiles. "Ah, you must be Peter Parker. Harry tells me you're quite the science whiz. You know, I'm something of a scientist myself." "Hey, cool. That last line confirmed it. I'm Peter Parker. That is Norman Osborn. The Green Goblin. I'm actually the fricking Spider-Man. Or rather, will be. As far as I knew, I hadn't been bitten by the spider yet. Judging by the scenario, this was probably the beginning of Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi movie. But I wasn't sure if there were any other Marvel heroes in this world. "Peter, this is my dad, Norman Osborn." Harry said. "It's an honor to meet you, sir," I said, shaking hands with him. "I just want to say what you guys are doing at Oscorp, designing the guidance and re-entry systems for the shuttle mission to Mars, really brilliant. That's so awesome." That last bit was just something I fetched from Peter's memories as conversation topic. "Impressive, you seem to know your game," Mr. Osborn said. "Your parents must be proud." "I live with my aunt and uncle, actually. My parents died when I was little," I said. "Sorry to hear that. I lost my parents as a young boy as well." At that moment the teacher called out to me and Harry from the entrance of the main building. "Hey, you two. I'm closing the door. Get over here." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Osborn," I said as I walked towards the university. "See you around, Parker," he said as he went back into the Bentley. I catch up with Harry inside the building. I see him smile at a cute red-haired girl that I assume was Mary Jane Watson. MJ smiles back, before returning to the conversation she was having with her friends. I feel Harry nudge me slightly towards MJ. "Go on, say something." "What now? Are you in your senses?" I respond. I may not be madly in love with MJ like Peter normally would have been, but I still didn't want to ruin my impression. After all, she was pretty. "Come on, what's the worst she's gonna say?" Harry asked. "How about W?" I said. The tour began. Me, Harry, and some 30-odd students as well as the teacher followed the tour guide, a female scientist of Asian descent, through the Genetic Research Institute, where we spotted a bunch of spider exhibits. There are over 32,000 known species of spiders in the world, the tour guide was saying. They belong to the order Araneae, which is further divided into 3 suborders, Mesotheli, Orthognatha, and Labidognatha. I saw a tall, heavily built guy, probably Flash Thompson, move close to MJ and put his arm around her. He nuzzles her neck. MJ pulls away and looks around to see if anyone saw. She spots me looking and blushes in embarrassment. I looked away immediately. I'll admit she's kinda cute when she blushes like that. The tour guide was explaining the jumping abilities of the genus Salticus spider when she caught my eye. Remembering that there was a camera around my neck and that I needed shots for the school paper, I gestured to the camera. "For the school paper?" I asked. She nodded. In my previous life, I wasn't exactly an expert photographer or anything, but I guess in this world, I got Peter's skills as well as his memories. I took a few shots, most of them pretty decent. Luckily, I stopped snapping photos before Flash or his cronies could get to me. We moved further on, passing more spider exhibits as well as scientists working on some science things. Over the course of 5 painstaking years, Columbia's Genetics Research Facility has finally mapped the genetic codes of each of these spiders, the tour guide said. Armed with these DNA blueprints, we have now begun what was once thought impossible, interspecies genetic transmutation. In this recombination lab, we use synthesized transfer RNA to encode an entirely new genome, combining genetic information from all 3 spiders into these 15 genetically designed super spiders, the first mankind has ever produced. The class proceeded to check the spiders out. They're seriously creepy looking. I saw MJ and Harry standing next to one another. "Disgusting," I heard MJ say in a fascinated voice. "Hateful little thing," Harry said in agreement. "I love it." MJ said, "Really? I mean me too. What a simp." "Just imagine," the tour guide said, "if one day we can isolate the strengths, powers, and immunities in human beings and transfer that DD code among ourselves. All known disease Q1D be wiped out. Of course, we're nowhere near ready to start experimenting with humans, so for the moment we're concentrating on these 15 spiders. Any questions?" 14. MJ said quietly. "Pardon?" the tour guide said. "Oh, I mean that there are 14 spiders here." "What? Surely there are 15. Wait, let me count. 1, 2, 3. As she counts, I feel something crawling up the back of my neck. Something small, like a spider. This might be the moment. I braced myself for the bite. It came a second late, and it stung bad. I almost let out a gasp of pain. After the bite, I flicked it off my neck with my hand. I saw it fall to the ground, dead. This was it. Hopefully. I swear if I get reborn into the Marvel Raimi universe, I wasn't sure if it was just Spidey, or if there were other heroes active soon to come, as Peter Parker, and get bit by a spider, only for it to be some dumb, normal spider. I will low-key kill myself. Okay, probably not. But I'd still be set as sheet. I knelt down by the dead spider to look at it. Sure enough, it looked like one of the super spiders. Holy shit, I was actually going to be Spider-Man. My freaking childhood dream come true. When I got home that afternoon, I was feeling really dizzy. If I recall correctly, this also happened to Peter when he got bit in the original Raimi trilogy, so that was fun. I opened the door to what my Peter's memories told me was my home. Entering the house, I saw a man in his late 50s or maybe early 60s, and a kindly old woman of similar age, having supper together. Uncle Ben and Aunt May. They didn't look quite as ancient as they did in the Raimi films, but they're still old. A bit more similar to the Amazing Spider-Man film versions. Aunt May saw me and beamed. "Oh, hello sweetie, how are you? You're just in time for supper." "Hey, how was the field trip, Michelangelo?" Uncle Ben asked. Yeah, it was great," I said. "Listen, I'm not feeling that great, I'm gonna go take a nap." "Okay. You sure you don't want anything to eat, Peter?" Aunt May asked as I approached the stairs. "Nah, I'm not hungry, thanks." "D'you get some pictures, Peter?" Uncle Ben asked as I climbed the steps. "Yeah, I got some good shots. I'll show you later." I went into my room. That was when my head started to spin really bad. I felt like I had a fever, and only barely managed to get to the bed before I blacked out. When I woke up the next day, the first thing I did was take my shirt off and look at my reflection. Using the words of Peter himself from the movie, there was big change. I had a lean, muscular build now. Not unlike that of a professional swimmer or, I guess, Spider-Man. My eyesight was also much better, I didn't need the glasses anymore. I looked out the window, and demon did I realize that Pete had a great view of MJ's room in the next house. And MJ didn't exactly bother to draw her curtains either. Fortunately, or actually I guess unfortunately, I missed the more interesting parts of her morning routine, and all I saw was her fixing her hair before exiting the room. Luckily, she didn't see me looking. That would have been awkward. At that moment I realized that I, in fact, was almost late for school. Getting dressed, I quickly ran down the stairs, feeling refreshed and energized in a way I had never felt before. "Hey, Michelangelo." Uncle Ben grinned at me as I jumped the last few steps into the dining room. "You're up. How are you feeling?" "Better than ever, Uncle Ben," I said happily as I drank my glass of orange juice. I then devoured a sausage and then ran out of the house with a slice of buttered toast in my hand. "Have you got your lunch money, Peter?" Aunt May called after me. Yeah, I got it." "Hey buddy, don't forget we're painting the kitchen after school today." "Okay, don't start without me," I said as I left the house. Closing the door behind me, I heard Uncle Ben chuckle to Aunt May. Teenagers. Raging hormones. I managed to get on the school bus in time, unlike yesterday. Nothing much happened at school. Nothing happened during lunch. MJ didn't trip and almost fall, no organic webs incident, no hallway fight with Flash. So maybe, just maybe, it's not the Raimi world. Perhaps I'm in the broader Marvel universe. If I was, then superheroes hadn't started popping up yet. If there had been any active superheroes flying around, then Peter Parker would definitely know about it. Yet there weren't any memories or knowledge about real, active superheroes in Peter's head. The material about superheroes that there was, all came from my memories. After school, I was on the bus on the way back home. My arm was partially hanging out the window, and I was resting my head on it. It had been a somewhat disappointing day. My powers hadn't shown themselves yet. They usually developed overnight according to the movies and comics. I felt the hairs on my arm stand up suddenly. My ears started ringing and tingling. I felt as though there was a potential threat in the bus behind me. Responding to my instincts, I ducked, the back of my seat shielding my head and body. The threat turned out to be a spitball fired by Flash a couple seats back. The projectile spitball hit the kid in front of me in the back of the head. He turned around and looked at me angrily. I just pointed back at Flash. The guy's anger suddenly vanished and he turned back to the front. He was probably scared of Flash. So I had Spidey sense. Hell if yeah. I was going to be Spider-Man. I was actually going to be Spider-Man. I had powers now. Dreams and fantasies were finally coming true. I had promised to paint the kitchen with Uncle Ben after school. That would take up the whole afternoon, meaning that I couldn't go out and discover my new powers. Not a problem. Tomorrow was Saturday. No school, so I could do it then. My clothes were covered in paint after the kitchen was done, so I went up to take a shower afterwards. I undressed and was about to step into the shower when I noticed a cockroach on the vanity. It was near my toothbrush, and no way in hell was I going to risk having something I put in my mouth every day even close to a roach. I moved to defuse the threat, by which I mean making the cockroach go bye-bye, but then something unexpected happened. That motherfucker flew right at me. Okay, but can we just agree that giving cockroaches the power of flight was a huge mistake on God's part? Like, that shit's freaky. I yelped like a little beach and tried to dodge the bug, and the next thing I knew was that I was sticking to the ceiling. I managed to climb down, and after squashing the demon bug, I tried sticking to the ceiling again, and briefly succeeded before falling. It wasn't exactly graceful, but it was a start. The next day, after breakfast, I headed out. "Hey, Michelangelo." Uncle Ben called out to me. "Where are you heading to?" To Harry's," I said. "Okay then, be sure to grab some milk and eggs on the way back." "Sure thing." I was not, in fact, going to Harry's. That's right, I used lies and deceit to hide my true destination. Maybe not the most dramatic thing to lie about, but that's okay. If I was going to be a superhero, I needed to improve my lying skills in order to hide my identity. Better to start sooner than later, right? I walked around town looking for a good, isolated place to test out my powers. After almost an hour of wandering around, I came to an abandoned factory in a safely secluded part of town. The factory had been abandoned for a couple decades, but was safe enough for me to F around with my powers without having the roof fall down on my head. First things first. Organic webbing, yes or no? After half an hour or so of me doing the classic Spider-Man hand gesture, I could soundly say no. That meant I'll have to develop my own web shooters. I just hoped that Peter's intellect could get me through that. Secondly, wall climbing sticking. That one was already a yes. I knew I could do that, but I would have to practice doing it to really get the hang of it. It took some time, but eventually I got it. My hands weren't permanently sticky, which was a good thing. In order to climb walls, I had to activate the power by will. Only then could I climb walls and stick to stuff. I had to stay focused too, otherwise the power would deactivate mid-climb. Thirdly, physical abilities. Spider-Man was far stronger, faster, and more agile than the average human. Speed and agility weren't as big of an issue as strength. If I recalled correctly, Spidey once punched Scorpion's jaw off when he wasn't holding back. Granted, it hadn't been Peter in control of the body, rather Doc Octopus, but it was still Spider-Man's power. I had to be careful, lest I do some serious damage. I had to punch with more strength than an average person, without that single punch being fatal or permanently damaging. The more I practiced my powers, the more I lost track of time. It was 4:30 in the afternoon when I got a call from Uncle Ben on my phone. I picked up. "Peter, where are you?" "It's getting late." He didn't sound mad, but concerned. "Oh, I'm sorry, Uncle Ben. I lost track of the time. I'm on my way home," I said. Please don't tell me he was going to leave the house to look for me. Because that will definitely end with him getting shot. "Don't worry, I'll be back soon," I reassured him. "Okay, be careful. Remember to get some milk and eggs on the way back, okay?" "Okay." I hung up. Time to head to the store, then back home. Walking the whole way would suck. So, after leaving the factory and getting back to the main part of town, I went into an alleyway, made sure no one was looking, and then began to climb up the side of a building. Once I was on the top, I ran towards the edge of the building and leaped onto the roof of the next building. I kept running and leaping, letting the wind ruffle my hair and adrenaline course through my body. It was a truly wonderful experience. At the store, it turned out that I didn't have any money on me. Whatever. Guess I'd have to find an ATM, call Uncle Ben and withdraw some cash from his account, then pay him back later. As I was about to exit the store, some guy, with a mop of dirty blonde hair and sunglasses, pull a knife on the cashier and demand money. Looks like a job for Spider-Man. Or actually, in this case, regular old Peter Parker. The robber got the cash and ran out of the store. The cashier then picked up a phone and called the police. I was standing at the doorway, blocking the robber's exit. He saw me standing and took out his knife. He said, "Listen, kid, don't do anything stupid, I don't want to hurt you. Just let me leave and we can all go home." I stepped to the side to let him pass. He moved to get out of the store, but I stuck my foot out at the last second, causing him to fall out onto the sidewalk on his face. The knife and the bag of cash fell out of his hands. He tried to get back, but I punched him in the face. Maybe a bit too hardly. He fell to the ground, unconscious. At first, I was worried I had done something worse. I checked his pulse. He was okay, just unconscious, and apart from a busted lip and a broken tooth, would be all right. I grabbed the bag of cash. For a brief second, the thought of taking it and running crossed my mind, but I disregarded that immediately. Stealing is a crime. I was going to be Spider-Man, not a criminal. Even if I didn't have the motivation that Spidey normally had, I was still going to be the good guy. Or at least try to. I went back into the store with the cash and returned it. "There," I said, handing the cashier the money. "I didn't take any, you can count it." The cashier took the sack. He looked at it for a moment before turning to me and saying, "Hey, you know what? Take whatever you need from this joint. It's free." "Really?" I asked. "Yeah, really." Guess being a good guy paid off. I left the store with the eggs and milk as well as a few other things for myself and headed back. Unfortunately, I couldn't do the rooftop leaping after I got the groceries because that might crack the eggs. Getting home, sometime I was relieved to find out that Uncle Ben had not gone out to find me and was still alive. Weirdly, I felt a sense of attachment to Uncle Ben and Aunt May as though I had known them all my lives, like Peter, and not just barely 2 days. Obviously, I didn't want them to die, but the concern and feelings I had were something else. I suppose it's a result of me being thrown into Peter's body. Maybe along with gaining all his memories and skills, I also gained all his feelings. This had been a good day, I reflected as I went to bed that night. I had learned a lot about my powers and even prevented a robbery. Elsewhere in New York, at an Oscorp facility, a bald, skinny old man with a pointed nose was arguing with a short, fat scientist. The contrast between the two men was almost comic. "I blame you for this," the skinny old man spat at the other man. "You told me to bring my magnetic air transport system to Oscorp." "I know, but Dash," the other man tried to say weakly. "You arranged the meeting with Norman Osborn." "I know, and I had the best intentions at heart, but Dash. He studied my ideas and rejected them," the old man yelled. And then he announces Oscorp Tech Flight 4 months later. "I know, and I'm sorry, Adrian, but Dash. Don't you dare apologize, Doctor," a new voice said. Norman Osborn entered the lab with 2 bodyguards behind him. "Oscorp has nothing to apologize for." "Nothing to apologize for?" the man called Adrian sputtered. "How dare you? You stole my work." "That's dangerous talk, Mr. Toombs," Norman Osborn said, approaching the 2 scientists. "Dangerous and unsupported." Placing a hand on Adrian Toombs' shoulder, Norman went on, "Listen, old man. You've been at this for decades without even a single success to your name. If you couldn't accomplish anything as a young man, who'd believe you created TechFlight as an old one? Boys," he said, addressing his bodyguards. "Show Mr. Toombs out, will you?" Toombs' face was dark as he turned to the fat scientist. "Good news," he growled. "I don't blame you anymore." He was then dragged out of the facility by Osborn's bodyguards. The 2.5 weeks following the spider bite were eventful. During the day, schoolwork kept me occupied. After school, I would go to the abandoned factory and train. I got pretty decent with my new powers after only a week or so. Enough to do small-scale crime fighting on the streets. The issue here was, I had no costume or web shooters. So, I whipped up a basic hero suits. It didn't even look like something a hero would wear. Rather a vigilante, or quite possibly a convenience store robber. Heck, it wasn't much of a suit to begin with. It was just a red mask with holes cut in for the eyes and sunglasses on top. The rest was just some regular trousers, a hooded jacket and sneakers. But that was okay. I was already working on my main suit. It was almost done. Apparently, Aunt May had taught me, or rather Peter, sewing a few years back, and I was actually okay at it. The design I was sticking to was the classic Spider-Man costume. A bit like the one in the Raimi movies, though not quite as chunky. For the past few days, I had been setting out at night to fight crime. Up till now that had mainly consisted of preventing robberies like the incidents 2 weeks ago and alleyway muggings. Peter's intellect helped me put together an idea on how the web shooters would work, and I was in the process of putting together a working prototype. I hadn't needed web shooters that urgently, since I had only been doing small-scale stuff. My short-term objective had been to do street-level crime fighting until the web shooters and upgraded costume were ready. Working on the streets would also get me some practical experience, which would be useful when I moved on to the bigger stuff. Even with my Spidey-related shenanigans, I had to keep up with homework. If it meant finishing it on the school bus or sometimes in the cafeteria, so be it. After all, this was my last year. I would have to go to college and then get a job after. Being Spider-Man didn't pay. Stay in school, kids. Don't do drags either. Today, things got even more hectic. Our biology teacher told me and another girl to stay after class to talk with him. That girl happened to be Gwen Stacy. Contrary to the Spider-Man canon, my memories told me that Peter and Gwen had never actually interacted with each other before. When the class finally ended, we went up to the teacher's desk. "You wanted to talk to us, sir?" I asked. "Yes, Mr. Parker, Miss Stacy. You might recall the field trip you went on a few weeks back? To Columbia University?" he said. Yeah, I'll never forget that field trip," I said. "Me neither," Gwen said eagerly. "It was thrilling." "Well, I'm glad you feel that way," the teacher said, "because Curtis Connors of Columbia University is offering 2 internships to promising high schoolers. And I recommended my 2 star pupils. You'll start this afternoon. That is all." Great. So now I had to do internships as well. Being Peter Parker kinda SEGD. I had finally put together a prototype for the web shooters and had been hoping I could try them out today. Not to mention the suit was also ready. This could have been my first proper night as Spider-Man. Now I was gonna have to spend it stuck in a lab with a man who might become the Lizard. This better be a paid internship. After school I went to Harry's house to kill some time. And by house, I mean giant skyscraper with a penthouse on top. The sofa me and Harry were sitting on was probably worth more than my entire house. I had called Uncle Ben to let him know where I was, so that he wouldn't go out looking for me and get shot if I didn't show up. At this rate, I'll start having a panic attack every time Uncle Ben steps out to get some milk. Oh well, better safe than sorry. So anyway, Harry said, as we played Mortal Kombat on his PS4. "Why'd you and Gwen stay behind after biology?" "Oh, Mr. Danton said we were going to intern at Columbia University working with Curtis Connors." "How cool. So what about the school paper? Aren't you their star photographer or something?" "Not anymore," I said. "Boys, can you please come here for a minute?" Norman Osborn called from the balcony. The balcony was bigger than my entire goddamn house. Norman was sitting on a chair under an umbrella. His laptop, which was also probably worth more than my entire house, was on his lap and he was presumably doing business things on it. He was a businessman after. "Forgive me for being nosy, but I couldn't help but overhear you say something about an internship, Peter." "Oh, it's no biggie. I got an internship at Columbia working with Curt Connors." "Connors, huh? Well, consider me impressed. That's quite the opportunity, Parker." He turned to Harry and said in a rougher tone. "I don't suppose you were considered for the honor, Harry?" "No, Dad," Harry said bashfully. "It's no big deal, Mr. Osborn, really," I said, trying to save Harry from this conversation. "We'll get out of your way now." Me and Harry start walking back inside. Suddenly, a voice shouted, "Osborn." Me and Harry turn around to see a bald man with a pointed nose, wearing a skin-tight green costume that highlighted his thin frame and motherfucking mechanical wings on his back fly towards us. Adrian Toomes. The Vulture. He swooped onto the balcony and grabbed Mr. Osborn by the shoulders with his clawed boots and took off with him. "Holy crap, Dad!" Harry yelled as the Vulture flew away. "Crap, what do we do?" "Call the cops," I told him. "Do it, just go." Well, guess I'll get to try out those web shooters anyway. I would have preferred a situation where someone's life wasn't at stake, but whatever. I'm Peter Parker, things never go right for me. As Harry ran indoors, I opened my backpack. I took out the web shooters and put them on. I took off my regular clothes. I was wearing my Spidey suit underneath. You know, just in case. I put my regular clothes in the backpack and put on my mask and gloves. Now donning my classic Spider-Man suit, I jump. The jump was many things. Wonderful, adrenaline rushing, and terrifying as sheet included. It was only after I jumped that I realized that I had no practical experience regarding web slinging. I knew the theory, but that would only get me so far. I might as well end up going splat on the sidewalk. Or on the side of a building. I shot a web onto a nearby building. It stuck and thankfully supported my weight as I swung forward. I let go of the web and fired a new one to another building. I then repeated this again and again, and started going after the vulture. Further ahead, the vulture swooped past the skyscrapers of Manhattan with Norman Osborn. "Toombs, stop!" Osborn yelled. "What will any of this accomplish?" "A means to an end, Osborn. Something you would know all about." The vulture yelled back. "You will announce me as the true creator of TechFlight, you will pay me all that I am owed, and you will publicly apologize for stealing my invention." "I never apologize, old man," Osborn retorted. "I may be an old man, but I'm not a patient one." The vulture shot upwards, higher than most of the surrounding buildings. He let go of Norman, letting him plummet hundreds of feet to the ground below. The vulture swooped back down to catch him before he hit the ground. Only, it wasn't the vulture that caught Osborn, rather, a person dressed in red and blue, with a black spider logo on his chest. "Oh, you heavy son of Beach!" That's the first thought that came into my mind when I caught Norman Osborn in midair. I was dangerously close to saying it out loud, too. That would have been a terrible first impression. "What? Who are you?" he demanded of me. "Who am I?" I said. "You sure you want to know? My story is not for the faint of dash." Unfortunately, my Raimi monologue was cut short by the vulture, who swooped past me trying to grab Norman. "These skies are mine," the vulture yelled as I narrowly dodged him. "You're right," I yelled back at him. "I really just rent." "Hey, can't be Spider-Man if you don't got some sass, right? Put me down." Norman yelled at me. "Man, you are the bossiest damsel in distress I have ever rescued. Also the ugliest. And the heaviest. And the first," I responded as I web-slinged away. "Who are you?" Both Norman and the vulture yelled at me in unison. "Why, I'm your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man." The vulture sped up and cut my web with his sharp wings mid-swing, causing me and Norman to plummet to the ground. I spotted a police station on the street below, and web slung us there. The landing was less than graceful, but at least I didn't break any of my or Norman's bones. 2 police officers were standing outside, about to get into their car. I quickly handed Osborn to them and said, "Just keep him away from that guy," I said, pointing to the vulture, who just swooped overheard trying to grab Osborn again but missed. "Wait, who are you again?" one of the officers asked. "I'm Spider-Man," I said as I slung away after the vulture. "I have to try and take him down before he makes another attempt." "Explanations inside," Osborn said to the officers. I followed the vulture, eventually catching up to him. Hey Beaky," I called out as I pursued him. "Listen, I respect anyone who dresses up as their favorite animal. Better still, you can fly. So, I gotta ask, you ever heard the one, with great power comes great responsibility?" "Arg," he snarled at me. Putting on a burst of speed, he flew off into the sky, far higher for me to follow by web-slinging. "Ah, Beaky, come on now. Don't get mad." "The name, us vulture," he yelled back as he disappeared into the skyline. I also noticed Stark Tower in the distance. That was interesting because there were other Marvel heroes in this world. They just hadn't appeared yet. I decided not to follow him, since Norman was mostly safe, and that was the main concern. Secondly, I was getting late for my internship. My first time as Spider-Man, and I end up facing a major villain right off the bat. At least the web shooters work fine. After retrieving my backpack from the side of the building where I hid it, I changed back into my normal clothes and headed over to Columbia University for my internship. I made a quick call to Harry explaining where I had vanished off to. I said I had chased the vulture on foot. I really need to think up some good excuses and have them stored up. I arrived at the university. Gwen was waiting for me outside. Hey, what's with that look? I asked. I'm only 5 minutes late. What look? I'm not giving you any look, she said. I am late though, right? I said as we enter the lab together. Always, a familiar voice says inside. A tall, well-built guy with blonde hair comes up to me. Eddie Brock, I recognize him. What's he doing here? Eddie. Gwen asks, taken aback. What are you doing here? Dim girl. Stealing the words out of my mouth. I work here. Dr. Connor's personal lab assistant. Neat, right? He responded. So, Parker. How are things at Midtown High? Do you need me to drop by and teach Flash Thompson a lesson sometime? Nah, it's all right, I said. So far, I was liking this version of Eddie Brock. At that moment, a side door that led to some other room opened, and a woman with orange hair and wearing a lab coat entered. Ah, here we are, Eddie said. Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy, meet Martha Connors. Martha? Why did you say that name? Luckily, I didn't say that out loud. That would have been embarrassing. After shaking hands, Martha Connors turned and yelled towards the door from which she had entered the lab. Kurt, stop hiding in the office. Come out and meet Peter and Gwen. Yes, coming, dear. A voice came from behind the door. A few moments later, a middle-aged, brown-haired man, with glasses and a lab coat, emerged from the office. He had a prosthetic right arm. Dr. Curtis Connors. The Lizard. Or at least, he will become the Lizard. Or maybe he already was on that path. I don't know, but I guess I'll find out eventually. After introductions, I followed Eddie to a corner of the room. He opened a cupboard there and started pulling out some equipment. Hey, Eddie, I said. So, what does this gig pay? Pay? He looked confused for a sec before letting out a chuckle. Peter, you're a high schooler with zero experience. You're not getting paid. Oh. Well, that FNGSE. The internship ended at my curfew was until 11, so I had 2 hours to do some web-slinging, wall-climbing action. After seeing Gwen safely to her home, because firstly, I am a gentleman, and secondly, she's cute and I wanted to make a good impression, I put on the suit and headed off into the city, looking for crime. It wasn't until 10:30 that I finally spotted some trouble. A car chase. The police were pursuing a black Toyota, and I was going to help. I stick a landing on top of the black car. One would think that a police officer would get to see their fair share of crazy, and one would be right for thinking that. But in a city like New York, there's always something to surprise you. Such as a random dude dressed in red and blue to drop out of literal effing nowhere on top of the car you were chasing. What the dash? One of the police officers said. Who is that? His partner said. Is he with them? How the hell am I supposed to know? I gave the police car behind me a thumbs up to let them know I was on their side. Not sure they got the message, though. From the roof of the black car, I broke the backseat window with a kick and slid into the car. Hey, fellas. I said once inside the car. There were 2 dudes, thug number 1 on the driver's seat, and thug number 2 next to him on the passenger seat. They looked like your stereotypical tough guy thugs. Where the F did you come from? Thug number 2 said before I shot a face at his web. Come on, man, mind your language, I said. I punched number 2 in the face, knocking him out cold. What? Number 1 yelled, turning around to face me. Why, you little I punched him as well, knocking him out with my superhuman strength. It was only after he was unconscious did I realize that that was not the best course of action, as there was no one behind the wheel now. Keeping one hand on the steering wheel, I used the other to try and manipulate number 1's leg and get his foot to push down on the brakes. God knows how, but I was somehow able to stop the car without any sort of horrible accident. With the car stopped, and both crooks unconscious, I exited the vehicle. The police car had also stopped, and the officers were standing outside, guns at the ready. Whoa, 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 don't shoot, I said as I stepped out of the car. I raised my hands just in case. Yo, I didn't take anything, I swear. In fact, I helped you guys, see? I point at the car. Who are you? One of the officers asks, still cautious. Me? Oh, I'm just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Don't worry, I'm with you guys. Spider-Man, the officer said, clearly sounding unimpressed with my choice of nickname. Because I can shoot webs and stick to walls and stuff. Really? He said, skeptical. Okay, anyway, I gotta go. I'm supposed to be home by 11, you see. Anyway, it was a fun chat. I'll see you guys around, bye. And with that, I web-sling away. Hey, wait, he yelled after me. What the hell was that? The officer said, watching the self-proclaimed Spider-Man disappear into the night. I have no idea. But I guess he wasn't lying when he said he could shoot webs, his partner said. Come on, Morales, let's arrest the perps. Kids these days. Between the showdown with the Vulture, the car chase, and the handful of incidents I was involved in over the next couple of days, Spider-Man seemed to be garnering some attention. I saw a couple kids talking about it during lunch and even caught a brief glimpse about it, that is to say, me, on the news. After the Vulture's attack on Norman a week ago, I made sure to keep an eye on his home whenever I was doing Spidey work. As far as I knew, the Vulture hadn't tried anything since. Maybe he was waiting for the right moment? Regardless, I was going to keep a watch on Norman. I had also made some minor upgrades to my gear. The web shooters had a longer range and the webs were stickier. I also had a police radio scanner app on my phone, which is apparently legal, that gave me updates on what was going down so I could help. Today, while I was waiting for the school bus at the stop, I saw a newspaper stand for the Daily Bugle. That caught my attention. Let's see if they've started their "Spider-Man is a menace" narrative yet. The answer was no, they hadn't yet. But they were offering money for pictures of Spider-Man. And who better to get pictures of Spider-Man than Spider-Man himself? It would be nice to make my own money, and of course to help out Uncle Ben and Aunt May should the need arise. But first, I would have to get through the school day. As cool as getting reincarnated as Spider-Man was, I wasn't too hyped about having to go through high school again. On the bright side, this was my last year, then I could go to college. Actually, now that I think about it, that's not much of a bright side. Once again, the universe saw fit to increase my day-to-day workload in its never-ending effort to screw me over. We got our biology tests back today. Me and Gwen both got A+, as usual. Harry managed AB, mostly owing to me basically hand-feeding him the answers when the teacher wasn't looking. The real problem was Liz Allen. Stereotypical mean girl, and part of Flash Thompson's cult of Deitch. Not his girlfriend though, from what I could gather, which was contrary to most comics. She got an F on the test, making it the third time in a row. This was the last straw for Mr. Danton. Ms. Allen, he said after class. This is the third time in a row that you've failed a test. You need to improve your grades. Yeah, sure, teach, Liz said as she began walking out of the class. Wait a minute, young lady, I'm not done talking, Mr. Danton stopped her. Your situation is frankly drastic. Therefore, Mr. Parker will be tutoring you from now on. What? Me and Liz both said in unison. Are you serious? You're putting me up with Parker? Liz said. I would have been offended at that if I hadn't completely agreed with her. Mr. Danton, with all due respect, I can't tutor Liz. I'm kinda busy, you see, with the internships and whatnot, I said. But the internships are only 3 days a week, Mr. Parker, Mr. Danton replied. Surely you can find time to tutor Liz on your off days? What is it with teachers confusing your free time with your availability? Like, sure, I only had internships 3 days a week, but that doesn't mean that I'm free the other days. Before me or Liz could say anything in response, the teacher held up his hand and said, "This discussion is over. Mr. Parker, you will tutor Ms. Allen on whatever day suits you best. You both may leave now." Man, being Peter Parker SE. Tomorrow work for you? I asked Liz outside class. I actually didn't have internships today. But tomorrow was also free, and I really didn't feel like tutoring today. Whatever, she said and stalked away, clearly said. Normally, I wouldn't mind tutoring a cute girl too much. But being Spider-Man, along with internships and homework, left little free time on my hands, and I really didn't want to spend it tutoring someone. Plus, the girl in question really didn't like me. Honestly, the feeling was mutual. I went to my locker to get my stuff at the end of the day, when I was cornered by Flash and his cronies. Well, if it isn't puny Parker, he said, cracking his knuckles. I sighed. I was seriously not in the mood for this. I'm not in the mood, Flash. Oh, look at little Parker Jr. Gonna cry. Did he just make a Spider-Man 3 reference? How dare he? The audacity. I tried to leave, but one of Flash's goons blocked my way. I put my hand on the guy's shoulder and shoved him aside with my enhanced strength. Whoa, the guy said as he stumbled back, but prevented a fall. Hey, get back here, Parker. I'm not done with you. Flash yelled at me. My spidey sense tipped me off about the punch directed at the back of my head. I turned and grabbed his fist. Flash was clearly taken aback by the fact that I had turned around so fast and stopped his fist. I squeezed his fist harder, causing him to yelp in pain. I let go. Please, just stay away from me today, I say. I begin walking down the hallway towards the exit. Oh no, you don't. I hear Flash yell at me. I turn around and see Flash and his goons running after me, so I also start to run. Since I am Spider-Man, I'm way faster than them. I ran out the entrance of the school and around the side of the building to a secluded spot, where I quickly change into my Spider-Man costume, hide my school bag behind a bush and web-sling to the front of the building, where Flash and his goons just emerged from inside. The other students, seeing Spider-Man web-sling and land in front of them, all begin chattering excitedly. Some started taking pictures with their phones. Hey there, I say to Flash and his buddies. SP Spider-Man. Flash asked. What are you doing here? Looking for you, actually. Me? He sounded nervous. Yeah. Listen, I've heard you've been a very naughty boy, bullying people for the fun of it. Not cool, man. Don't bully anyone. Understood? Yeah, you got it, Spidey. And with that, I web-sling away. It took me half an hour to realize I had forgotten my backpack back at school. After retrieving it, I returned to web-slinging around the city. My last free afternoon for the week, and I was gonna make the most of it. First order of business, get some shots for the Daily Bugle. Shockingly, New York was quiet right now. I swung by the Osborn residence, just to make sure Norman was all right. I spotted him on the street outside the tower, getting into his car with 2 bodyguards keeping watch. I hopped onto the roof of a nearby building to keep an eye out for the Vulture in particular. I didn't see him, but I decided to follow Osborn to wherever he was going, just in case. It's good thing I did, because after only a few minutes I saw the Vulture fly by a nearby skyscraper. Maybe he didn't see me, or maybe he decided to go for it anyway and deal with me as well, but he swooped down to Osborn's car. I quickly took out my camera and webbed it to the corner of a nearby building, from which it would have a good angle of the scene. It was set to a 3-second timer, after which it would take 16 pictures. I swung forwards, trying to get to the car as quickly as possible. The Vulture tore open the roof of the car, and was about to grab Osborn and fly away when I fired webs at his face to buy me time. It had the effect I wanted, and I was able to get to the Vulture before he could get Norman. I kicked him off the roof as I swung and landed on the car. He flew back a few yards, then shot towards me. I dodged him, but as it turned out, he wasn't aiming for me at all. In dodging the Vulture's attack, I had basically opened the way for him to grab Norman. After grabbing him, Toombs flew away. Crap, I said. Get back here, Beaky. I shot webs from both shooters at him. They both stuck to his wings. I held onto the webs and tried to pull him back, but instead he pulled me along with him. Soon I was swinging through New York City behind the Vulture. Whoa, Beaky, calm down, will ya? I yelled at him. The name is Vulture, he yelled back. At that moment, I saw a building up ahead. I was going to slam into the building, whereas the Vulture would pass above it. Not good. The only thing I could do before I hit the building was get my legs up, so that I would hit the side of the building with my feet instead of my entire body. Incredibly, my spidey strength allowed me to hold onto the webs even after impact, which hurt like hell. By the way, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be limping for a while, and now that I was sticking to a wall, I was also preventing the Vulture from going any further. What? The Vulture yelled as he found himself unable to fly forward. You're still there? Yep, still here. I grunted. I heard a horrible grinding noise. I assumed that Beaky was trying to fly away, but my webs were still stuck to his wings, causing some damage to the wings. It was only a question of which would break first, the webs or the wings. The answer? Well, I tried to pull back so that the webs would tear off the wings, which worked actually, but the webs also broke. One of the wings actually flew over me and fell down onto the street below. Thankfully, the street was empty. I heard the vulture crash onto the roof of the building with Norman. I climbed onto the rooftop and saw the vulture on his back, still conscious but groaning in pain after falling 20 feet. Norman had fallen some distance away. He quickly stood up and straightened his suit. After capturing the vulture, I handed him over to the police, along with Osborn. So that was my first victory against a member of Spider-Man's rogue gallery. I felt pretty good about it, not gonna lie. I returned to where the battle had started to get my camera. All of the shots only the first 8 or so actually captured the action. And even then, they were pretty bad. On top of that, I just realized that my appearance as Spider-Man at the school earlier had probably given other people tons of opportunities to get good photos of me. Now that I think of it, they had been taking pictures of me. That reduced the chances of me getting the prize money even more. Well, it can't hurt to try anyway, right? Who knows, maybe I might get the prize money. I did have an action shot, after all. To make a long story short, I didn't get the prize money. I walked out of the Daily Bugle an hour after my fight with the vulture, kind of bummed out. It was still relatively early, so I figured I'd head home, get some rest, then go out again as Spidey. I walked past a shop with TVs on display behind a window. All the screens were running the same thing, a live news channel. The thing that caught my eye was, in fact, the headline. Billionaire CEO taken hostage by terrorists in Afghanistan. The news anchor was saying, just hours ago, CEO of Stark Industries, Tony Stark, was taken hostage by a terror group in Afghanistan who intercepted the convoy he was traveling in. Okay, this confirmed it behind a shadow of doubt. I was in the broader Marvel universe. I was still bummed about the Daily Bugle thing, though. News of Spider-Man's battle with the Vulture was on TV that night. That is, after they finished the Tony Stark news. It honestly felt pretty good to see them referring to me as a hero rather than a vigilante. Hey, Peter, Uncle Ben addressed me as we ate dinner that evening. What do you think about this new Spider-Man fella? Oh, he seems cool, I said. He's trying to do good. That's gotta count for something, right? You know, Uncle Ben said, back in my day, there used to be another one like him. What do you mean? I asked. Like, another hero? Sure, called the human ant or something. I think you mean Ant-Man, darling, Aunt May said. Oh right. And that's the one, Uncle Ben said. Back then? Maybe Hank Pym, I guess? What happened to him? I asked. He retired. Got wrapped up in some controversy. Started acting erratic, endangering innocent lives, that kind of deal. That's what they said on the news anyway. Eventually he accepted responsibility for what he did and retired in '94. I'm not too familiar with Hank Pym's character, but I think something of that sort did happen in the comics. You see, Peter, Uncle Ben continued, these sorts of things really show you that having powers isn't enough. You gotta have the heart, you gotta have the sense of duty. Ant-Man was a great hero back in the 80s and 90s, but he fell, and he fell hard. I hope this Spider-Man character doesn't go down that same road as well, because with great power comes great responsibility. Is Uncle Ben like some sort of NPC or something? It's like he's been programmed to say that line, no matter what. I'll keep the message in mind though, because anyone with even a vague idea of Peter's story knows what happens if I don't. After dinner, I went into the backyard to take the trash out. I was about to head back in when I saw MJ storm out her house next door into her backyard. The fence separating our houses was pretty low, so I could see the other side fairly well. MJ looked upset. She probably had been crying. I heard shouting from her home. Her parents were arguing again. I was caught in a bit of a dilemma. Part of me, motivated by morality, wanted to say something to comfort her, while the other, more selfish, part of me wanted to skip the awkward talk and go inside. Peter Parker didn't exactly have a way with words, and I sure as hell didn't. And it's not like it was any of my business. But my moral compass overruled my personal desire and I decided to engage. Hey, I said softly. Oh hey, she said, quickly wiping her tears. She walked over to the fence. You okay? I asked, moving closer as well. Yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry, she said as the shouting continued. Were you listening? Oh no, I wasn't listening. I mean, I heard something, but I wasn't listening. God, I sigidi at this. I'm sorry about that, Ruckus, she said. Your aunt and uncle never shout like that. Oh, believe me, they can shout pretty well. That got a smile out of her. So, where to after high school? She asked me after a few seconds of silence. Oh, I trailed off. Well, I thought that I'd become a photographer like in the comics, but after today I decided it would be best to altogether abandon that angle and go for something else. I'll probably make my way through college. I love science, maybe I'll become a biologist or something. What about you? I want to act on stage, she said unsurely. Be an actress. Hey, that's wonderful. I said. I cried like a baby when you played Cinderella that one time. Peter, that was first grade, she said, smiling. Silence fell between us for a bit. She looked at my face for a bit, then said, You have blue eyes. I never noticed. Probably because of the glasses, I said. I don't wear them anymore. Really? Why? Don't need 'em. She moved a bit closer. Our faces were within 12 inches of each other. You're taller than you look too, MJ said. I hunch. Don't. Make that 3 inches. My heart was beating faster and faster. Before anything could else happen, we were interrupted by a car horn from the driveway of MJ's house. Flash Thompson and his cult of Deech were outside in a convertible car. Brand new by the looks of it. Hey MJ. Flash yells. Wanna go for a ride in my birthday present? MJ looks back at me and says, Thanks a lot, Pete, I enjoyed the talk. She then headed off to the driveway to join her friends and roam the city. After watching her drive away, I decided that a bit of city roaming was also in order for me. After web-slinging through town for a bit, I landed on top of a skyscraper and sat down for a bit. The city was quiet, or at least that's what my police radio app told me. Since nothing was going down, I decided to scroll through my phone for a bit. I noticed a text sent by Harry 3 hours ago. Yo Pete? I responded. P, what's up? His reply came a minute or so later. H, where you been all day? P, oh I went home early. H, Spider-Man showed up after school today. P, really? No way. Just wait. P, what did he do? H, he called out Flash for being a bully. It was actually kind of funny. P, did you get it on video? H, yeah, hold on a sec. He sent the video. Watching it made me realize that that whole incident was some seriously shitty decision making on my part. I could have run away. Heck, I probably should have run away. What I did there simply risked exposing my identity. Even if the spot I had chosen to change had been secluded enough, someone could have walked past it. Okay, from now on, no more of that. I'll be more careful. The rest of the night was mostly uneventful, which was kind of disappointing. I had been hoping for some action. I met up with Liz at a cafe the next evening. Tutoring her was an absolute nightmare. I don't why, but I thought that maybe, just maybe, she would pay a bit of attention, for her own sake. But I guess that was way too optimistic of me. After an hour and a half of tedious hard work, almost entirely on my part, I said, Oh Liz, listen. I'll give you 10 minutes to revise these 2 pages, then I'll quiz you. Passing her the textbook, I checked my phone for notifications. No new text messages, although a new YouTube video from Jacksepticeye and Reddit mods removed my meme, gee, what else is new? After a few minutes I looked up and saw that Liz was on her phone too, busy texting whoever. She hadn't even picked up the textbook from where I had put it on the table. Liz, I said. She didn't look up from her phone. Liz? Hello, Earth to Liz. I said, a bit louder, starting to get annoyed. The change in tone got her to glance up briefly, before turning back to her phone. That was the last straw for me. Okay, you know what? I said, now seriously frustrated. We're done here. If you're not gonna pay attention, fine by me. You need this tutorship for your grades, but I sure as hell don't. I'm out. I stormed out of the cafe. Liz looked kind of shocked. Like, she hadn't expected anything like that at all from me. Honestly, seeing that look on her face was satisfying. I'm out here, spending my evenings tutoring her when I could be doing 1,000 other things, such as saving people's lives, and she's not even paying attention. I decided to go web-slinging to cool my anger. After diving into an alleyway to change, I headed into the city. After swinging through the city for a while, I climbed to the top of Empire State Building and sat down. The fifth tallest building, it gave me a great view of the whole city. Up here the characteristic noise of New York was still audible, but distant. It was strangely calming. A few minutes of this was just what I needed after that hour and a half of torture. Now that my frustration at Liz was gone, I realized that maybe I might have overreacted a bit. Or maybe not. But either way, I still felt a bit guilty leaving her like that. It wasn't a very gentlemanly thing to do. Maybe I should go back. Give her a second chance. That's what Peter Parker is about, right? Second chances. At that moment, my phone let me know that there was a robbery going down a few blocks away. I stood up. Standing on the edge of one of the tallest buildings in New York, I took a deep breath and jumped. The cold air hitting my face as I plummeted hundreds of feet downwards, mixed with the rush of adrenaline, made the leap one of the most exciting things I had ever experienced. I shot a web to a nearby building just in time and swung forwards. Less than a minute later, I arrived where the crime was going down. The robbers, two thugs, were running out of the bank with bags of cash in hand, towards a white van parked outside. I dropped down onto the road in front of the criminals' getaway van. They saw me and stopped in their tracks. "Well, you again?" one of the thugs yelled after seeing me. "Wait again?" I said. "Have we met before?" That's when I recognized them. They were the two thugs I had stopped in that car chase a few days back. "Oh," I said. "It's you two again? Wow, how did you get out of jail so quickly?" I webbed the thug nearest to me in the face. He yelled. He moved his right hand to his face to try and remove the webbing. "Nope. Also, I see you haven't fixed that loose tongue of yours," I said, webbing his hand to his face as well. He stumbled around. I stuck my foot out, causing him to trip and fall. I saw the other robber running into an alleyway. I followed him into the alley. I fired webs at him. They stuck to his calf, causing him to trip. He managed to get his hands up just in time to break the fall. I webbed his feet together so he couldn't get up easily. I walked up to him. "I'll take that, thank you very much," taking the bags of cash. The thug reached out and tried to grab his pistol which had fallen a few feet away from him. "Nah, I don't think so." I pulled the gun towards me with my web before he could grab it. But he hadn't been going for the gun. A few inches from where the gun had been was another smaller object. I picked it up. It was a pendant. I opened it. Inside was a picture of a young girl. His daughter, Prof. "Give that back," the thug spat at me. That's when I put two and two together. This guy was Flint Marko. I don't know why I didn't recognize him just by his green striped shirt. And on top of that, this was quite possibly the "I'm not a bad guy, I just have bad luck" version of Flint Marko. "Is this your daughter?" I asked. "That's none of your business," he spat at me. "You're doing this because of her, aren't you?" "Huh. Let me guess, she's sick. The surgery is expensive and you don't have that kind of money, so you've resorted to crime, right?" He looked stunned by what I had just said. How do you know that?" Okay, that confirmed it. This was the sympathetic Flint Marko. I handed him back the pendant. I began, but before I could say anything else, the police arrived. I had no choice but to hand Marko, and the money obviously, over. Now that I knew that his daughter was dying, and that saving her could also result in Marko stopping his life of crime, I felt even more inclined to help. I couldn't just let a young girl die without doing anything about it. But how was I going to get that money, though? I suppose I could go for a Robin Hood direction. But instead of stealing from the rich, I just take the money from criminals. That way the bad people get screwed over while the needy get helped. I'm Spider-Man, I'm supposed to help people. Look out for the little guy, right? I'm supposed to try, at the very least. And I'll be dead if I didn't try in this scenario. I headed off into the night, on the lookout for more crimes. I felt guilty about last night at the cafe with Liz, so I decided that I'd go up to her today and cool things over. I didn't get a chance till the end of the day. I was walking down the hallway with Gwen and Harry when I saw at her locker alone, getting her stuff. Hey, just a sec guys, I said to Harry and Gwen. I broke off from them and walked over to Liz. Hey, Liz? I asked uncertainly, not knowing what reaction I was going to get from her after last night. Oh, Liz, I'm sorry about Dash, I began but Liz cut me off. Peter, I'm sorry, I should have paid attention last night, she said, and she looked sorry too. You were right to be mad, I promise I'll be better from now on. Has stopped working. I certainly hadn't been expecting that. It was quite the contrast from her normal mean girl behavior. I mean, I know that Liz eventually warms up to Peter in the comics, but I hadn't been expecting that to happen so soon, and so suddenly. Not that I was complaining, but it was certainly odd. Oh, I said. Okay, no biggie. I overreacted last night too. Sorry about that. So, we can try again tomorrow? Same time, same place? Sure, that sounds okay, she said. Great. Well, what do we have here? Puny Parker talking to Liz? A familiar voice said behind me. I turned around. It was Flash, accompanied by his group of friends. MJ was strangely absent. Is Parker bothering you, Liz? A guy who I assume was Liz's boyfriend asked her. He's just bugging me about the tutorships, it's no big deal, she said, her mean girl attitude back in full swing. She walked past me and joined her friends. Although she did turn around and wave at me quickly as she walked away. Maybe the mean girl thing is just an act. Also, yay for me being let off the hook by Flash. Maybe the talk with Spider-Man got to him. Are my eyes betraying me, or did I just see Liz wave at you? Harry said as he and Gwen walked over to join me. Yeah, I'd like to know what happened too, Gwen said. What? You guys don't think I can have a positive interaction with a girl? Not that one, Harry said. Well, I said. Last night I sort of stormed out on her. Really? Why? Gwen asked. She was being a pain in the butt. Though looking back, that was probably an overreaction on my part, I said. I felt kinda bad about it, so I figured I'd apologize to her today. But I wasn't expecting her to apologize as well. Is that what happened? Harry asked in disbelief. Liz apologized? To you? This is a weird day. Who knows, maybe she's into you? Gwen said. Harry laughed at that. Yeah, right, Liz is into him, he said. And Peter's Spider-Man as well. No offense, Pete. Hey, none taken, I said, and I meant it too. I was Spider-Man, after all. Later that day, me and Gwen arrived at Columbia University for our internships. When we entered Dr. Connor's lab, we were certainly caught off guard. Gwen was, at the very least. It took me a minute to get it. Kurt and Martha, their son Billy, who visited the lab sometimes, and Eddie were all there. Dr. Connors was having an arm wrestling match with Eddie, while Martha and Billy watched eagerly. Like I said, I didn't get what was wrong at first. Then I realized that Kurt Connors was wrestling with his right arm, aka the arm that was amputated as a result of wartime injuries. Oh my God, Dr. Connors! Gwen exclaimed. Why your arm? As good as new. Connors said happily. Okay, this was bad. Like very, very bad. Kurt Connors was about to become the Lizard soon. Listening to him describe exactly how he did it was even worse. It was pretty much word for word the same way he did it in the comics, and pretty much every comic book fan knows how that turns out. Peter? Dr. Connors asked. What's wrong? You look off. I guess I hadn't been hiding my feelings very well. It's just, like, wow. I said. I'm actually stunned right now, that's so amazing. I know, right? Dr. Connors said happily. Care for an arm wrestling match? You're on. I said. I made sure to hold back my strength for the match, enough so that it looked like I was struggling. Well, consider me impressed, Peter, you're tougher than you look. Connors said after I won. Thanks, I guess? Okay, maybe it was a bit cheap to let myself win, but I didn't want to miss a chance to potentially impress Gwen either. I was still concerned about the whole Lizard affair, though, but I think I'll keep that to myself for the time being. I wasn't gonna let that ruin the day for the others. And who knows, maybe Dr. Connors actually got the formula right. Maybe he wouldn't turn into a big, ugly, super strong green monster with regenerative abilities. Besides, it's not like all big, ugly, super strong green monsters with regenerative abilities were evil. Later that same night, less than an hour after Peter and Gwen and Eddie had left, Curt Connors and his wife, Martha, still lingered at the lab. Their son Billy was asleep on the couch in Curt's office. Martha Connors finished up what she was doing and said, "I'm ready to go home, Curt. You sure you're not coming?" Curt was busy examining a sample of some bacteria on the microscope. "Yes, darling, I'm sure. I have some work left to do. Once I finish, I'll come home." "Suit yourself, Curt. I'm taking Billy home as well." "All right." She went into the office to get her son. Curt looked up from the microscope and jotted down some notes on his notepad. Martha came out of the office with Billy asleep in her arms. She kissed her husband on the cheek and went to the exit door of the lab. "Good night, honey, huh?" she said before noticing something off. "What is it, Martha?" Curt said, turning around to face her. "Something wrong." "Turn back around again," she said. "Why?" "Just do it." Curtis turns around again. On the back of his neck, there are a few black scales. "What is it?" "Curt, it's like you've got scales on the back your neck," Martha said. "Take off your shirt." "What? Why?" "Curt, just do it," Martha said. "This might be a problem." He reluctantly removed his lab coat and took off his shirt underneath. Sure enough, every few inches or so, there were a few black scales starting to appear. "Oh my God," Martha said. "The scales, the lizard DNA. I better call the others." "Wait," Curt said. "Don't call them. It's late dash." "Curt, it's only been half an hour since they left," Martha said, running into the office to put Billy down on the couch and to call the others. "Besides, we'll need their help." I headed off into the city pretty much as soon as I got off from the internships. Swinging through New York on the lookout for crime. I had to help Flint Marco's daughter. And for that, I needed money. The best course of action in that sense seemed to be to just take money from criminals. I would have to be careful not to take too much at a time. If too much money was missing from a crime scene that is to say Spider-Man, had been to, then that would cast suspicion on me. Stealing money is illegal, even if the people you are stealing from are criminals themselves. Granted, I wasn't using the money to help myself. In fact, I was using it to save someone's life. But that wouldn't exactly hold up in court. My phone started ringing. It was Eddie calling. I picked it up. "Hey Eddie, what's up?" I asked. "Bro, Pete, you gotta get down to the lab." He sounded stressed. "Mrs. Connors called, it's urgent." "Okay, I'm on my way," I said. "Should I call Gwen too?" "She's on her way. You just get here as quickly as possible." "Understood." I hung up. It didn't take a genius to put two and two together. An emergency at Curt Connors' lab, especially after he regrew his arm using lizard DNA, could only ever mean one thing. My least favorite Spider-Man villain had come to be. I didn't change out of my Spider-Man costume, I just put my regular clothes on top. I took off the mask and gloves and put them in my jacket pockets. I got to the lab 10 minutes or so after the call. Gwen was already there. Dimon, that was quick of her. The others were all standing around Dr. Connors, who was sitting at a table, writing something on a notebook. "Pete, you finally showed up," Eddie said as I entered the lab. "What's going on?" I asked. Martha Connors sighed and answered, "Curt's experiment with his arm went wrong." She gestured to Curt, who rolled back his sleeve to reveal black, shiny scales on his arm. They hadn't fully covered his arm yet, but they were starting to. She continued, "He used lizard DNA for the experiment, which is more primitive than human. And the reptilian part of his brain is growing." "It's growing, I'm regressing," Dr. Connors grunted, his voice sounding pained. As I got a better look at him, I realized that there were some scales on his face as well. Dr. Connors let out a gasp and grabbed his head. "Curt, please, you need to keep a clear head," Martha said. "No," Curt said shakily, "you need to hurry." I'm losing control." Eddie sighed and looked up from the microscope he was using. "The formula creates new reptile sequences faster than I can ID them. I don't know how we'll ever knock them all down." I spoke up. "Wait, Eddie, what if we work from the other end? Create a human DNA filter that knocks out the lizard code? Like the noise filter on a cell phone. So that way, we erase all the non-human DNA, Gwen said. Eddie scoffed. Yeah, nice idea, bro, but that's not Dash. No, wait. Martha Connors said. That could work, a gene cleanser. Why yes, Kurt grunted. Yes, I should have seen it before. My notes, they'll have everything we need. I heard the office door creak. I turned around and saw Billy peeking out. When he saw me, he closed the door and went back inside. I went into the office to talk to him. He was probably really shaken up by what was happening. I entered the office and saw him on the couch, flipping the pages of a book about lizards. Hey Billy, I said softly. How long have you been listening? I don't want to talk about it, Peter, he said without looking up from the book he was flipping through. He came to a particular page and showed me the book. Here, the book says that some lizards lay hundreds of eggs and never see them hatch, Billy said. Okay, I said, not exactly sure where this was going. Most of the babies get eaten by predators, he said. And the parents don't even care, because they've only got lizard brains. I picked up what he was trying to say. I did my best to comfort him. Billy, I said, placing a hand on his shoulder, trust me, your father will always care about you. Even if he turns into a monster? He asked in a small voice, a tear rolling down his cheek. I opened my mouth to say something, to comfort this little boy who was scared because his dad was turning into a lizard. But before I could say anything, a loud scream came from the lab. I opened the door and saw Kurt Connors on the floor of the lab, clutching his head and yelling. His wife tried to grab him, but he pushed her away and tried to crawl away from the others. His yelling turned into screeching. Horrible, blood-curdling, reptilian screeching. Dr. Connors' lab coat started to rip as his frame grew larger. His arms and face turned black as they became covered in scales. Sharp claws appeared at the tip of his fingers. A tail appeared as well. His face morphed from that of a human into that of a lizard. Billy let out a gasp from my side. That's when I realized that he had been watching too. That was not something a kid should ever see. That was something no one should ever have to see. I pushed Billy inside and told him to stay there. Dr. Connors, or rather now the lizard, climbed onto a table and let out a roar, showing his sharp, yellow teeth and long tongue. His gaze turned towards Martha. Kurt, Martha said, trying to put as much distance between herself and the monster that had until a minute ago been her husband. Kurt, do you recognize me? The lizard lunged at her. I was too far away to react in time. Luckily, Eddie managed to push her out of the way. Doc, listen, he said. We just want to help, Joef. The lizard hit Eddie with his tail and sent him flying towards me. I did my best to catch him, but damn was he heavy. The lizard then jumped out of the window of the lab and ran off into the city. Dr. Martha and Gwen helped Eddie up, who immediately ran towards the exit. Eddie! Gwen called after him. Where are you going, Dash? I'm gonna follow the doc. You finished the gene cleanser. I'll call in with the location, he said as he ran out of the door. I decided now was the time for me to leave as well, while Martha and Gwen were distracted. I turned around but they saw me. Peter? Gwen said. Where are you going? Dash. What do I say now? I had to leave, otherwise the lizard would wreak havoc. Here goes nothing. Oh, I have to go home. My aunt and uncle, will ground me if I'm late. What? Gwen said, outraged by my shitty excuse. Peter, you can't leave right now. We need you. I can't be late, they'll worry. I grabbed my backpack and ran out the door. Peter, wait. Martha called after me. I felt horrible having to leave them like that, as if I was genuinely ditching them in the middle of a crisis, rather than actually helping them out. But I guess I'm gonna have to go through a lot of that from now on. No one ever said this superhero gig was gonna be easy. I ran into a nearby alley, webbed my bag to the wall, and quickly changed. I jumped onto a wall and climbed to the top of the building. I jumped and began web swinging through the city in search of the lizard. Now, if I were a 7-foot 5-inch lizard, instead of a 5-foot 7-inch spider, where would I hide? I said to myself as I swung through the buildings. I noticed people running out of a subway entrance up ahead. That's probably where he had gone. I went down into the subway station and sure enough, I saw the lizard wreaking havoc. People were rushing to the exits. The lizard cornered a woman. She had her back against the wall with nowhere to go. He moved in on her, teeth bared. I swung in and kicked Connors mid-swing. He fell back and the woman ran away to safety. The lizard got back up and lunged at me. I jumped into the air to dodge him, but he grabbed me by the ankle and threw me towards the wall. I hit the wall hard, getting the wind knocked out of my chest. The lizard then climbed onto the roof of a train that had just pulled up. I managed to stick a web to the train just before it left the platform. I flew forwards as the train picked speed. My feet hit the tracks and I started running behind the train, one hand clutching the web attached to the train. I grabbed the web with both hands and pulled myself forward, jumping to increase the distance I covered. I landed on top of the train with the lizard in front of me. He charged towards me, but I dodged to the side and punched him across the face. That only made him angrier, and he grabbed me by the neck and slammed me into the roof of the train. Then he began punching me in the chest over and over, causing the train's ceiling to dent more and more, and me to regret getting bit by a demon spider more and more. Eventually, the surface became so weak that one last punch from the lizard sent me through the ceiling into the train compartment below. I was way too dazed from the butt-whooping I had just sustained to get up and fight. The people in the train looked at me and then up at the ceiling from where I had fallen through. I tried to get up, almost fell over. "Don't worry, folks," I said to the people in the train as I got up. "I've got everything under, my back, everything under control." I climbed out of the hole I had made in the roof of the compartment, only to find that the lizard was nowhere to be seen. He could be hiding. I couldn't let my guard down. Sure enough, the lizard attacked me from behind at frightening speed. If I hadn't just gotten the snot beaten out of me, I probably would have been able to respond to the spider sense in time and dodge. But instead, I got punched off the train. I fell to the tracks as the train pulled up just ahead at the next station. I saw the passengers run out of the train and go to the exits. The lizard didn't attack any of them. Instead, he jumped off the train and began crawling the walls of the tunnel. I watched him crawl out of sight further into the tunnel. Well, so much for that plan. I got up. Every part of my body hurt. The thing about Spider-Man, he was pretty demon strong, but most of his villains were usually more powerful. I needed some serious upgrades to my gear. The gene cleanser might be done by now though. I left the subway and made my way back to the lab as Spider-Man. I found Gwen and Martha Connors working on the gene cleanser. "Is it done?" Gwen was saying. "Yes," Martha said. "At least it squares up with Kurt's notes. The only way to know for sure is to test it on him. The problem is his hide is too thick, so we can't inject it. We'll have to get him to drink it." "How on earth are we gonna do that?" Gwen asked. "I could help you with that," I said, announcing my presence. "Spider-Man," they both said, clearly taken aback by my sudden arrival. "Yep, it's me. Anyway, I can help with the gene cleanser." "How did you know we needed your help?" Gwen asked. "Call it, spider sense, I guess," I replied. At that moment, Eddie's came from Martha's phone. She had Eddie on speaker mode. "Dr. Connors is at the Bronx Zoo," he said. "Is the gene cleanser ready?" I grabbed the vial containing the cleanser and said, "Tell your friend to stay clear of the lizard. I'm on my way." "Who was that?" Eddie asked after Spider-Man left the lab with the cleanser. "Our friendly neighborhood hero," Martha said. "He's on his way and so am I." She grabbed an extra flask of the gene cleanser and moved to the exit of the lab. "Gwen, can you stay here with Billy?" she said. "Yeah, of course." Gwen ran into the office to check on Billy, while Martha left the lab with the extra gene cleanser. Gwen opened the door of the office, only to find it completely empty. Billy was not there. "Oh no, Dr. Martha." I arrived at the Bronx Zoo with the trusty gene cleanser. I found Eddie outside the reptile world. "Hey," I said, landing next to him. "Oh, Spider-Man," Eddie said. "You're here?" "Yep," I said. "Got the gene cleanser with me as well." "I think he's in there," Eddie said, pointing to the reptile world. "With all the other creepy lizards." "Okay, stay put. I'll get him," I told him. inside. Oof, it's like a sauna in here, I said as I entered the building. There were lizards and other reptiles crawling all over the place, so I decided to stick to the walls. I saw an artificial swamp up ahead. It was pretty big and probably pretty deep. There was a good chance that the lizard might be hiding in there. Sure enough, I saw the lizard's head out of the water, swimming around in the pond. I positioned myself on the wall, waited for the right moment, then jumped towards the lizard, ready to grab its head and force the gene cleanser down its throat. I hit the water and grabbed the lizard by the back of his head. He roared, giving me an opening to make him drink the cleanser. Only problem here was that this was not actually the lizard. In fact, it was just a regular old crocodile. The real lizard, according to my spider sense, just emerged from the water behind me. I tried to get out of the water, but I was too slow, and the lizard wrapped his arms around me and went underwater. I tried to break free from his clutches, but I couldn't, not to mention the fact that I was holding my breath, which made it harder. I tried as best as I could, but was unsuccessful and slowly started to lose consciousness. Luckily, before I blacked out, my old buddy the crocodile from like a minute ago came to my rescue. And by rescue, I mean trying to fight the lizard for its dinner, i.e. Either way, the lizard had to let go of me to fend off the crocodile. I drifted to the surface, semi-conscious. I was picked out of the water by none other than Eddie. "I thought I told you to stay put," I said. "Are you complaining?" Eddie asked incredulously. "I don't want anyone to get hurt," I said. I let out a sigh. The lizard's not in the mood for drinking his medicine. Not when he's enjoying his playdate in the heated pool, I said, watching the lizard wrestle the croc in the swamp. Lizard heated pool. Time for a convenient epiphany. "Listen to the dude," I said. "I have an idea. Follow me." I ran outside, Eddie right behind me. We ran to where the polar bear caves were. There was a pool of cold water outside the artificial caves. "Here," I said. The fake swamp was heated, but dunk a reptile in freezing polar bear water, and he'll slow up. "Right," Eddie said, a grin starting to appear on his face, slow enough for someone to force the gene cleanser down his throat. "Exactly. All we need is some bait to lure him out with," Eddie said. "Some lizard bait." He ran off. "Where are you going?" I yelled after him. "Don't worry, I'll be fine. You just make sure everything else here is ready," he yelled back. I got a bad feeling about this, I said to myself as I watched him run off. Eddie was a smart guy, at least in this universe, he was. He wouldn't do anything too stupid, right? I decided to get ready, as he had requested. Firstly, make sure the polar bears don't go for a midnight swim. Easy enough. I webbed up the entrances of the caves. Secondly, get a good angle from where I could pounce on the lizard and get him to drink the gene cleanser. Also easy. There was a good spot on top of the caves that would get me a good angle to attack, and keep me out of sight as well. I got into position and waited. After maybe a minute or so, Eddie came running out of the reptile house, the lizard chasing him. Okay, I take back what I said about how Eddie wouldn't do anything dumb. Eddie was a good distance ahead of his pursuer. He was already halfway to the pool by the time the lizard came into sight. Even if the lizard was much faster, he would probably make it to the pool without getting caught. This was my one chance, and I couldn't blow it. Unfortunately, Eddie tripped over an uneven concrete tile and fell. Jesus Christ, Eddie, we are not in a horror movie. The lizard caught up to him, and opened his mouth and let out a roar as he towered above his prey. Well, the pool plan was botched, and I had to do something quick, otherwise Eddie could possibly die. I got up and web-swung myself towards Connors, gene cleanser in hand. The element of surprise was crucial to success here. And that's when my phone rang mid-swing. Always silence your phones when you're relying on stealth, kids. The lizard was alerted to my presence, and he swatted me away with his tail. I fell to the ground. Thankfully, the gene cleanser flask stayed in my hand and didn't break. The lizard began walking towards me, teeth bared and ready to finish me off. I tried to push myself back to put as much distance between the two of us. I could try to run, or web-sling away, but the odds of any of those options succeeding seemed low. There was too little distance between me and Connors, and he was too fast. He would probably grab me before I could fully get away. Just then, a voice shouted, "Dad, stop." A weird mixture of relief and simultaneously, dread washed over me. I was relieved because something took the lizard's attention off of me, and worried because of what that thing was. "Billy Connors, Kurt's son. Kid, stay away from him." I yelled. "No. He's not a monster, he's my dad. He won't hurt me." The lizard's expression softened ever so slightly as he looked at Billy. Almost as if he recognized his son again. All of a sudden, he didn't look quite so hostile. Well, that was my opening. I jumped up and quickly punched my reptilian foe across the face with a good deal of force behind it. "No!" Billy yelled as Connors hit the ground. I jumped on top of him and opened the gene cleanser flask. The lizard roared at me, which, despite bombarding me with horrible breath, was just what I needed, and I poured the liquid down his throat, causing him to instinctually swallow it. I got off from on top of him. The lizard writhed and rolled around on the ground in what was probably pain or discomfort, letting out blood-curdling screeching noises while doing so. But what was done was done. The large, black-scaled, reptilian monster that was the lizard was now transforming back into the intelligent, respectable, and one-armed Dr. Curtis Connors. After the transformation was complete, I helped Dr. Connors up and sat him down on a nearby bench. He was drowsy and semi-conscious. At that moment, Martha Connors arrived with Gwen. "We're here, Martha said, but then she saw what had happened. "Oh, who did it? It worked, the cleanser worked." She sounded overjoyed to have her husband back. "And you," she said, suddenly addressing Billy. "Never, ever scare me like that again." She pulled both her husband and her son in for a hug. "Thank you, Spider-Man," she said to me, "for bringing my husband back." "Anytime, Doc, it's what I do," I said. Now that the adrenaline was subsiding, I realized just how much my body hurt from head to toe. Eddie ruffled Billy's hair. "How'd you even get here, kiddo?" he asked him. "On my skateboard," Billy said simply. Eddie looked around for a bit, then said, "And where's Peter?" "He didn't come," Gwen answered, sounding kinda sad about me. "He said his aunt and uncle would worry if he stayed out late." "Well, what?" Eddie sputtered, astounded. "Seriously? He couldn't have called his aunt and uncle and told them there was an emergency? Oh my God. I expected him to have a bit more of a spine." "Eddie, it's okay," Kurt said weakly. "He's only 17, it's perfectly understandable that he'd be scared." "She's 17," Eddie said, gesturing to Gwen. I should get going," I said, now starting to get uncomfortable. "Crime fighting to do and all. Also, it's Eddie, right?" I said, addressing, guess who? Eddie, who nodded in response. "Yeah, thanks for the help, man," I said to him. "But, maybe next time, don't use yourself as bait, okay?" "Wait, what?" Martha asked. "Okay, bye," I said as I swung away. First order of business, call back Uncle Ben to let him know why I was running late. The story of Spider-Man's battle with the lizard was on the news the next day. Miraculously, it seemed that none of the identities of the people involved, Martha, Kurt, Billy, Gwen, and Eddie, had been revealed. So nobody knew who the lizard actually was. All the better. Some things are better left a mystery. I decided I had put off making major upgrades to my suit long enough. Certain villains like the Vulture could be handled with the basic gear, but villains like the lizard were much, much more difficult to beat. True, I likely wouldn't be facing the lizard again because Martha and Kurt, being two very smart people, would probably destroy the lizard formula and put it behind them. But even so, Spider-Man didn't exactly have a small rogues gallery. Villains like Green Goblin, Doc Octopus, and Venom etc. were still yet to come. And I would have to be ready for them. I spent most of the school day daydreaming about set upgrades and how I was going to pull them off. After the day ended and I was getting my stuff from my locker, I heard someone call my name. "Peter! Peter!" I turned around and saw Gwen looking at me, hands on her hips. "Oh, hey Gwen," I said. "Peter, what was that?" What was what?" "That stunt you pulled yesterday," she said. "How could you ditch us in the middle of a crisis like that?" I didn't mean to leave you guys like that, but, like I said, my aunt and uncle worry and dash. I tried to explain myself, but she cut me off. "I don't want to hear any excuses, Pete," she said. "I know it was scary, I was scared too. We all were. But you could have at least helped out with the gene cleanser. We're friends, Pete, we're supposed to help each other." "Gwen, hey, don't walk away from me. Gwen, come on," I said as I watched her stalk away. Goddamn it, I'm the one who got his butt beat by a giant lizard. I was the one who made Connors drink the DMN gene cleanser. And yet I'm the one getting shat on. I know I've said this a million times at this point, but being Spider-Man SE, being Peter Parker SEKD, the lizard incident, after the initial horror was over, turned out to be something of a blessing in disguise. Our internships were put off for a week, in part because we all needed some time to recover from it, and also because the lab was pretty much wrecked. That meant that I had more free time, meaning more time to go out as Spider-Man, meaning more time to gather money to help Flint Marko's daughter. It also meant that I could work on my upgraded suit. Spider-Man, despite possessing incredible speed, strength, and agility, not to mention spider sense, still got his butt kicked by some of his more notable villains such as the Green Goblin, Venom, Dr. Octopus, etc. Getting my butt kicked by the lizard was really just a demo. Today was Friday, meaning that I had the whole weekend ahead of me to develop some upgrades. Or so I thought. Being that the day was Friday, the last school day of the week, our teachers saw fit to drop a truckload of homework on us. Between my increased homework, crime fighting, and tutoring list today, as well as on Saturday, I would basically have zero time to upgrade my gear. Well, that if Speaking of Liz, her attitude had considerably improved since my outburst during our first lesson. She actually paid attention now and tried to learn. She was also a lot nicer to me. Not just during the tutorships, but also during school. Although, whenever Flash Thompson or his cronies were around, she'd revert back to her original mean girl attitude. Well, she did have an image to maintain, or else she'd risk getting isolated by her friends. But at least she was starting to warm up to me. And it's not like I'm allowed to criticize someone else for playing a persona. At lunch, the coach made an announcement, saying that the Midtown High Mustangs were holding tryouts over a 3-day PRD, starting that afternoon after school, for a new tight end. Apparently, the guy in the starting lineup broke his leg and was out of commission, and the backup was suspended from the school. Harry said he was trying out for the football team, and by football, I mean American football, not soccer, and I promised to come watch. I wasn't liking Harry's chances, since he wasn't particularly well-built, but I was gonna be optimistic, for Harry's sake. Arriving at the tryouts, it appeared that I was not the only one Harry had invited. Gwen was also sitting in the bleachers. I went over and sat down next to her. "Oh, what a surprise," she said upon my arrival. "You actually showed up for your friend for once?" I mean, not to discredit her intelligence or anything, but there's a pretty big difference between battling a giant lizard and watching high school football tryouts. "Gwen, will you stop? I'm getting tired of this," I said. "Peter, you abandoned us at the worst possible time," she said. "Do you seriously expect me to not be mad at you? And it's not just me, even Eddie said." I stayed silent for a few moments. God, I hated this conversation. I hated having one of my own friends think of me as a selfish coward who ditched her at the worst time. I was the exact opposite. I helped them. Without me, might not have gotten the gene cleanser to Connors at all. Part of me considered telling her the truth. That way I could gain her trust back. Besides, I could rely on Gwen to keep my secret. She didn't seem the type who would let slip something like Spider-Man's secret identity. But every other part of my brain was screaming at me not to do it, so I didn't. It was stupid. It's called a secret identity for a reason. "Listen," I said. "What can I do to make it up to you?" She simply scoffed but said nothing. That set me off, and I got up and relocated to a different seat. I really hadn't cared for American football in my previous life, and apparently Peter didn't either, because I really didn't know what was going on in the tryouts. No way to know for sure whether Harry was doing well or not. But I guess I'd find out eventually. After the tryouts, I caught up with Harry outside school. Gwen was talking to him, but when she saw me coming, she bailed. Jesus, this was getting annoying. "Hey, Harry," I said, walking up to him. "How'd it go?" "It went okay," Harry said unsurely. The final verdict's gonna be on Sunday. He watched Gwen walk away before turning back to me. So, did you guys, have a fight or something? It's complicated, I said. At that moment, I felt my spider sense go off like crazy. I turned around in time to see someone with a pair of wings flying towards me and Harry. Harry, get down. I yelled and pushed him out of the way. Harry got out of the way, I did not. The vulture grabbed me by the shoulders with his clawed feet and flew off. What, you again? I shouted at the vulture as we flew hundreds of feet above ground through downtown New York. I mean, Spider-Man locked you up? Man, they really needed better security prisons. It hadn't even been 2 weeks since I got rid of Tooms, and now he was out and about again. I escaped, he looked down at me. Wait, you're not Osborn's son. Well, took you long enough to, I started to say, but he let go of me, causing me to plummet way down back to the ground. Instinctually, I tried to shoot webs, but my web shooters were in my bag, which was still on my back. Luckily, instead of falling hundreds of feet, I managed to fall on the rooftop of a nearby building. I may have fallen 50 feet instead of hundreds, but it still hurt like hell. I lay on the rooftop in agony for a few moments, before getting my spider butt back up to chase down the vulture before he could get to Harry. I quickly changed into my spider suit, webbed my bag to the side of the building, and set off after Tooms. So, he was back out of prison. Looks like he still had it in for Norman. Only this time, he was willing to abduct Harry to get to him. I caught up with the vulture a short distance away. Hey, is that my favorite bird-themed supervillain? I called him. You again. Tooms spat at me. Beaky, it is you. I said in mock happiness. Say, how'd you even get out of prison so quickly? Did you oof? The vulture took a sharp turn my way and collided with me. Being that it's actually pretty hard to make quick turns in midair, especially in mid-swing, I couldn't dodge in time. The impact sent me flying into a nearby building. I crashed through the window into the room inside. Miss Brandt, why is Spider-Man in my office? I heard a voice say angrily. I looked up and saw none other than the Madman J. Jonah Jameson himself sitting behind his desk, a cigarette in his hand. Oh, hey JJ, I groaned as I got up. Big fan of your work. And with that, I went back out the window. Tell you what, Spider-Man's a menace. I heard him scream at poor Miss Brandt as I jumped back out into the city. I followed the vulture again. I almost caught up with him before colliding with yet another object that came flying out from around the corner. Whatever it was that I hit, it was hot. And not hot, like Mary Jane, but hot, as in the bad, extremely warm sense. The force of the impact sent me, once again, flying into a building. I hit the building and plummeted well over 100 feet to the ground and blacked out. Jesus, this was turning out to be a shitty day. This time for both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I woke up in an unfamiliar environment. I was in a bed. The room was mostly dark save for a lamp on my nightstand. There was a window directly in front of my bed, but the curtains were drawn, so I couldn't really tell what time of day it was. I sat up. My body was a bit sore, but nothing felt broken. At that moment the door of the room opened and a man entered. Ah, Mr. Parker, you're finally awake. Wonderful, he said. He walked over to the window and pulled the curtains open. It was still bright outside. Maybe only an hour or two had passed since I blacked out. Or maybe a whole day. Where am I? I asked the man. Am I in a hospital? Well, you would have been under normal circumstances, the man said. But that would have risked compromising your identity. Something tells me you wouldn't like that. At that moment I realized that I had blacked out in my costume, and I wasn't currently wearing it. That got me freaking out. Where's my suit? Who dash? I started sputtering. The man chuckled. Relax, kiddo. Your secret is safe with me. You're inside the Baxter Building, home of the Fantastic Four. As I got a better look at the man, I noticed his brown and white hair. He wasn't wearing the iconic uniform of the Fantastic Four right now, but this was certainly Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic. Okay, so maybe the day wasn't as bad as I thought. Fantastic Four? Are you guys, superheroes as well? I asked. Obviously, I knew who and what the Fantastic Four were, but it would make sense that I would be curious or confused. After all, they didn't know that I was an SI. Reed Richards chuckled lightly and said, "Yeah, I guess you could call us that. How are you feeling?" "Fine," I said. How long was I out?" "About an hour and a half. You took quite a fall. But it looks you made it through just fine. Hell, you didn't even break anything." "Wait," I said, suddenly remembering something. "What about the vulture? What happened after I blacked out?" "Well, the reason you blacked out was because you collided with Johnny, one of my more reckless teammates," Reed said. "You fell to the ground, I rescued you and told the others to go after the vulture. I quickly dropped you off here and went off to join my teammates. Though, by the time I rejoined them, they had already dealt with Tooms. I'm not the fastest member of the team, you see, that's Johnny. But unfortunately, Johnny can only fly when his power's activated, in which case he would be covered in flames. Don't worry though, we've taken care of Tooms and your friend is safe. We've also smoothed everything over with the authorities. They know you, and by that I mean Peter Parker, not Spider-Man, is with us." "Okay, that was good news." I stood up slowly. My legs felt a bit wobbly, but I didn't fall. "Perhaps you should rest a bit more," Reed Richards said as I got up. "Nah, I'm okay, thanks," I said. "Suit yourself that. You do seem mostly unscathed." Where's my stuff?" I asked. My school bag was probably still webbed to the side of that building, but my suit should be here. Yes, right this way," Richards said, leading me out the door into a hallway. "I hope you don't mind, but while you were out cold, I examined your suit a bit. Just to see the mechanics." "So, I said as the two of us walked down the corridor. "How come I've never heard of you guys before? Was this your debut or something?" "Yes, actually," he replied. "This was our first public appearance as a team." "That's cool. I was the first person ever saved by the Fantastic Four. We ran into a blonde dude in the corridor coming out of one of the rooms." Here we have Johnny, the Human Torch," said Richards. "He's the reason you ended up back in that room. Johnny, this is Peter." "Oh, hi," Johnny said with a charming smile, extending his hand for me to shake. "Yeah, sorry about that back there." "It's cool," I said, shaking his hand. "You took quite the tumble," Johnny said. "But you made it through just fine. Who would have thought that the amazing Spider-Man that we've been hearing so much about for the past few weeks was just a kid?" "Yeah, well, you should never judge a book by its cover. Or rather in this case, a hero by his costume. Well, see you guys around," Johnny said, and he moved past us towards the window on the other end of the corridor. "I'm off on a date with a hot girl. I'm not sure if the hot thing there was intentional or not, but I certainly hoped it wasn't." Reed led me to the elevator. We got in, and he pressed the button for the 33rd floor. The elevator opened into what I assumed was Reed Richards' lab, judging by the many scientific devices and machines. "Whoa," I said, taking in the sight of the lab. I may not be the geek Peter was, but even so, the lab was really cool looking. Especially since I actually knew what some of the stuff did. "This is awesome, Doc." "Thank you very much," he said back. "Anyway, here we are." He walked over to a table where my suit was laid out. "All things considered, I was quite impressed with what you have here," Reed said. "Really?" I asked, slightly taken aback that someone like Reed Richards was impressed with my handiwork. "All things considered, yes," he replied with a smile. "The suit, the web shooters, and the webbing itself are very impressive work, especially for a teenager such as yourself." He put a strange sort of emphasis on the word, teenager. "Hey, not all teenagers are dumb," I said with a grin. "Most of us are, but not all." "Clearly not," he said. He paused for a while before saying, "You know, if you like, I could make you an upgraded suit. If you want, that is." I probably should take him up on that offer. Reed Richards was an actual FING genius, not to mention that he was also a billionaire, with a whole bunch of cool machines and gadgets and whatnot. He could probably make a kick-ass spider suit for me. Sure, okay," I said somewhat sheepishly, rubbing the back of my head. "If it's not too much trouble, then yes, please." "Very well, Mr. Parker, I'll give it my all. It might take some time though." I'll let you know as soon as I finish it. Seriously, Doc, thanks a lot. You're the best. My pleasure. I hung around the lab for a few more minutes, talking with Richards about tech and science and other nerdy shit. But I decided it wouldn't be nice to overstay my welcome. Hey, thanks for everything, Dr. Richards. I really appreciate the help, I said. But I should really get going. I took my suit and made my way back to the elevator. A sudden thought crossed my mind, causing me to stop in my tracks. Something wrong, Peter? Dr. Richards asked, noticing my abrupt halt. Do you need help finding the exit? No, it's not that, I said, slowly turning around to face him. Listen, Doc, you've helped me out a lot today. I honestly feel kinda bad asking this, but can I ask you one more favor? Be my guest, he said in response. The thing is, a while back I caught a crook, I said. Just a regular two-bit thug. But I realized that the only reason he was doing crime was to save his daughter. She's sick, you see, and the surgery was expensive. The guy had no alternative, so he had to resort to crime. Reed Richards stroked his chin, but didn't say anything. I tried to get the money myself, I continued. But so far it's too little and it's taken me too long to get it. I'm not sure how much longer the girl has, but I'm starting to worry that I might not save her in time. Reed remained silent for a moment or two. Then he spoke up. No need to worry, Spider-Man, I'll do my best. What was the name of the criminal? Flint Marko, and his daughter's name is, Penny, I think, I said, retrieving the name from my recollection of Spider-Man. Consider it done, he said. Oh God, thank you so much, Document. You're a saint. I owe you big time. I said, and I meant it too. The thought of failing to save Penny Marko had been riding on my head for the past week. It was a huge relief knowing that the girl was more or less okay now. Reed Richards could easily afford the operation. After showering Richards with gratitude, I went to the elevator. Instead of going down, I went up to the roof. Once on the roof, I changed into my spider suit and jumped off the building. Okay, first things first, retrieve my bag. I had put my phone in the bag when I had changed into costume earlier that day against the Vulture. When I got to the bag and took out my phone, I saw there were 5 missed calls from Uncle Ben, 3 from Harry, and 4 from Gwen. But most surprisingly, 3 from Liz. Oh boy. I called back Uncle Ben first, to let him know that I was okay and what had happened. On my way home I called back the other 3 as well, starting with Harry. Oh thank God, Pete. Harry said as he picked up. I was worried sick. Don't worry, Har, I said. I'm okay. What about you? The Vulture didn't get you, did he? Nah, those other guys, the Fantastic Four or whatever, stopped him. But seriously, Pete, if something had happened to you... Hey, come on, don't say that now, I said. Anyway, I'll catch up with you later. Right now I gotta talk to Gwen. Gwen picked up almost immediately after I hit call. She was even faster than Harry, God bless her. Hello? Peter? Are you okay? She said, sounding just as worried, if not more, than Harry had been. Yeah, I'm fine, I assured her. Oh, thank God, she said, sounding super relieved. Listen, I'm sorry about today. I shouldn't have acted like that, Dash. No, I said. Don't say that. You had every right to be mad. I was a JRK for leaving you guys behind back then. I promise I won't do it again. I mean, yeah, I was Spider-Man blah blah blah. But I couldn't tell her that, so I decided it was best to just SCK it up and put this whole mess behind me. Next up was Liz. Petey? Are you okay? Where are you right now? Yeah, I'm okay, Liz. I'm on my way home, I reassured her. Also, Petey? Sorry. I laughed a bit at that. It was kinda adorable. Nah, it's alright, I said. Also, Liz? Do you mind if we skip the tutorship tonight? No, of course not. That must have been terrifying back there. You need the day off. Okay, but we're still going tomorrow, I reminded her. The fact that they had all sounded so relieved that I was alright, even Liz, was honestly kinda heartwarming. First thing I did when I got back home was crash on my bed. Well, technically, that was the second thing I did. Upon entering the house, I was smothered by Aunt May and Uncle Ben's hugs. After reassuring them that I was 100% fine, and that the mysterious superhero team had treated me well, they let me go. I went to my room and collapsed on the bed. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling. News of the Fantastic Four's debut, and their battle with the Vulture was trending. So was Spidey getting his butt hooped. Well, you win some, you lose some. The day had started out absolute shit, but it had taken a pretty solid turn for the better by the end. I had gotten to know the Fantastic Four, was going to get a sweet upgraded suit, and was also getting Penny Marco the money for her surgery. One thing's for certain. I may have gotten Reed Richards to solve my immediate problem for me, but I had to make sure that this didn't become a regular thing. I couldn't be a burden on my allies. So from now on, I'll only ask for their help if absolutely necessary. After a while of scrolling, I decided to close my eyes and get some rest. But I wasn't really tired and Reddit was calling out to me, so I decided to go back to my phone. After maybe 5 minutes or so of browsing my Reddit feed, I heard something, like a small pebble of sorts, hit the window pane. I got up and walked over to the window. It was MJ, leaning out her bedroom window. She waved at me. I opened the window. "Hey, May," I said. "Hey, Pete," she said in return. "How's your day?" Pretty bad actually," I said. "Really? Why?" she asked. That got me kinda confused. How did she not know what happened today? That's when I remembered she hadn't stuck around for the tryouts. Even so, she must have heard the news or someone else must have told her. I sorta got attacked by the Vulture," I said. "Crazy old guy with wings? Spider-Man fought him a couple weeks back?" "What?" she said, confused. Then her confusion turned to concern. "Wait, really? Oh my God, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Honestly, seeing her fret about me like that was adorable. Also touching. Today I had learned just how many people care about me, and it felt pretty good knowing so many people did. "Yeah, I'm okay, don't worry about it," I said. "So, how was your day?" "It was all right," she said, a bit quietly. She brushed a strand of hair out of her face, before saying in a small voice, barely audible, "Can I have your number?" "Sorry, didn't catch that last bit," I said. "Can I have your phone number?" she said, a bit clearer this time. Well, I wasn't gonna say no to a pretty girl asking me for my number, so I gave it to her. "So, do you wanna maybe hang out some time?" I asked, a bit nervously, after we had exchanged numbers. "Of course," she said with a smile. "When? How about Sunday?" I suggested. "Sure, Sunday sounds good," MJ said. "Okay, great," I said. "I'll let you know the time." "Okay, see you around, Pete," she said, and she blew a kiss at me. I pretended to catch it in midair. "I'll keep this safe," I said, getting a laugh out of her. She went back into her room, as did I. I would head out back into the city as Spider-Man maybe an hour or two later. This day had really made a comeback towards the end. Not only had I gotten myself a sweet upgraded suit, well, I actually hadn't got it yet, but I would, soon, and taken care of the Penny Marco situation, but I had also just successfully asked out a cute girl. Not too bad if I do say so myself. Heading back out into the city that night, I was in a great mood. Having asked out Mary Jane Watson on a date successfully can be a big morale booster. Oh, and I also had a kick-ass new spider suit in development by none other than Reed Richards himself. All things considered, good stuff. As all good non-flying superheroes tend to do, I found a nice, tall building with a cool-looking stone gargoyle to sit on, gazing down at the city. I took in the sight of New York at nighttime. And that's when my weird, hormonal teenage body decided it was a nice time to have an existential crisis. A little over a month ago, I had been shot, killed, and reincarnated as one of the most iconic superheroes of all time. I had been given a second chance to live. So far, I hadn't really made the most of that second chance. True, it had only been a month or so. In other words, not a terribly long PRD of time. But I didn't want to waste it. I had spent that time more or less just being Spider-Man Peter Parker. Now while that may sound cool, like, oh, I'm Spider-Man, blah blah blah, but it actually wasn't that great. Sure, being Spider-Man was dope, but what I meant was that being Peter Parker SE. Because of Pete's secret identity, he often ended up letting down those close to him. Much like I had in my previous life. Only difference here being that I hadn't needed a secret identity to ruin my friendships. F that sheet. I got reborn as a superhero, and I wasn't gonna waste my second life being the exact same loser I had been in my first. Okay, from now on, I would be a better Peter Parker. One that didn't let people walk all over him, one that didn't let his life be a big pile of dogs hit because of his crime-fighting routine. Just one problem. How the F was I actually gonna do that? I had been a pathetic, broke but college student back in my previous life. Sure, I had made up my mind to change that plenty of times, but I had never actually succeeded. So, what chances did I have of succeeding this time around? What guarantee was there that I was gonna actually be able to change my life? Absolutely zero. But God damn it, I was gonna try. One of the first things that popped into my mind was my secret identity. Should I tell someone? Someone I know for a fact that I could 100% trust, like Gwen Stacy? Most superheroes tend to have at least one partner, super or otherwise, who knows their identity and helps them out. Iron Man has War Machine and Pepper Potts. Batman has Alfred and a dozen Robins and Batgirls. Other heroes have whole teams. It would make sense that I have such partners too, preferably sooner rather than later. Maybe it's a bit selfish of me to loop Gwen into the dangerous world of Spider-Man. Maybe it's selfish of me not to, but I honestly don't know. I would have to think it over a lot more. I also needed to improve my fighting skills. Although that one was maybe optional, since with my new suit I doubted I would really need it. Still helped to be good at it. But right now, there were crimes that needed stopping. I spent a good chunk of the next day doing homework, but I also did a bit of research. I wanted to know what other superheroes there were in this world. I knew Hank Pym's Ant-Man was a thing. Or more accurately, had been a thing. The Fantastic Four were already active, and Tony Stark had been stuck in a cave somewhere in Afghanistan for a few weeks now. Firstly, Steve Rogers, Captain America. According to Google, Steve Rogers did exist, though he was presumed dead. Secondly, Charles Xavier. Yes, although there was no evidence to suggest that the X-Men were a thing yet. A quick look on the world map also told me that Wakanda, Latveria, and all the other fictional nations of the Marvel Universe also existed. Hoping against hope, I decided to look up Gotham City, and found nothing. And the only thing that showed upon Googling Batman was a city in Turkey. Well, it was worth a shot. Later that Saturday night, I found myself being babied by Liz when we were supposed to be studying. Apparently, the fact that I was completely unscathed by my run-in with the Vulture was not enough to satisfy her fears. I honestly don't know what Liz thought I did, but it seemed to be more along the lines of bravely putting myself in danger for the safety of my friend, regardless of what happens to me, rather than accidentally getting swooped by the Vulture and screaming like a lil beach when he let go of me. But honestly, I didn't mind. Liz was warming up to me and I wasn't gonna complain. After about maybe 5 minutes of Liz fawning over me, I finally managed to calm her down enough to actually start studying. After giving her a topic to memorize, I went back to my phone. Once or twice, I looked up and caught Liz looking at me. She quickly turned back to her book when she saw me looking. I already knew Peter in the comics has something of a harem going on with MJ, Liz, Gwen, Felicia Hardy, and about half a dozen more, but it was still a bit surreal to actually experience firsthand a girl being kinda into me. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. She probably does not have a crush on me. Not this soon Disregarding these thoughts, I plugged in my headphones and started listening to the radio scanner app in case anything was going down in the city. A while later I got wind of a robbery going down at a store only a few blocks from where I was. I could make it there before the cops if I hurry. Hey, Liz. I said. I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick. You focus on your work, alright? She nodded, and I ran off to the cafe bathroom. Entering one of the stalls, I locked the door and quickly changed out of my regular clothes into my Spider-Man suit. I left my sneakers on the floor, so that people could see them under the stall door and know it's occupied. I climbed out of the window above the toilet and began swinging my way over to the crime scene. It wasn't much. Just a regular convenience store robbery. 3 guys, one of them in the van at the driver's seat, the other 2 inside the store. I went up to the driver guy first. I knocked on the window. He saw me and panicked, started looking for his gun. I punched a hole through the window, taking him out as well. Then I went into the store. Then I came out less than a minute later, with both remaining thugs knocked out cold, their robbery a failure. "Hey, thanks a lot, Spider-Man," the store manager said. "You know, let me make it up to ya. If you're ever in the area and you need something, just drop by here and you can have it for free." "Gee, thanks man," I said. "I really appreciate it." "Least I can do," he said. By that time, the police had arrived, and that was my cue to leave. After climbing back into the bathroom stall that I had left my clothes at, I quickly changed back into my civilian clothes, i.e., put them over my spider suit and took off my mask. I rejoined Liz in the cafe. "There you are," she said as I sat down at the table. "What took you so long?" "I was only in there for like 6 minutes," I said. "You timed that?" she asked. No, I mean, just focus on your work," I said. She went back to work with a hint of a smirk. Later that night, once we had finished studying, Liz said to me, "Hey, Peter? Listen, I'm sorry about the way I've treated you all these years." Okay?" I said. "You're a great guy," she went on in a small voice. "I really shouldn't have treated the way I did for so long. I'm sorry. How can I make it up to you?" "Huh," I said. "Listen, let's just forget about it. It's okay, really." Liz was outright apologizing for her behavior. That was certainly refreshing. One might say that a simple apology isn't enough to make up for years of mistreatment, and they'd be right. But since I, technically, hadn't been mistreated for years, I wasn't gonna hold a grudge. Later that night, 10:30, I was swinging through town in my spider suit, on the lookout for crime, when I swung past an art museum. I saw a dark figure on top of the glass roof. I landed on a nearby rooftop, watching the scene. The person, whoever they were, cut a hole through the glass and slid down a rope into the museum. Okay, another robbery to prevent. Simple enough. I jumped and landed on the glass roof without making a sound. The thief had already slid down into the museum, but they were still attached to the rope. I looked down and saw the thief getting ready to nab a painting. But I wasn't gonna let that happen. I grabbed the rope firmly, and before the person could react in any way, I pulled back with all my strength. Well, not all of my strength, but still a lot. The burglar came flying through the circular hole they had made and fell onto the roof. They almost immediately got up and charged at me. Or rather, she got up and charged at me. It's pretty obvious who I'm talking about. There's really only one noteworthy female burglar in the world of Spider-Man, and that is Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat. I hadn't really noticed her silver hair before, since she had been at a considerable distance up till now, but this was definitely her. She lunged at me with her sharp claws. "Hey, try to keep those claws away from the face, will ya?" I said, dodging her attack. "But, got a date," she said, continuing to try and turn me into a scratch post. "Actually, yeah," I said. I grabbed her arm the next time she lunged at me. But before I could really do anything else, I was blinded by pain, thanks to a sharp, painful kick right to the nuts. I fell to my knees. What a cheap shot. "Well, I went for the next best thing," she said. "Best in terms of most pain to the enemy, or most pleasure to the date?" I said. That caught her a bit off guard, which gave me my opening. I shot a web at her foot and pulled back, causing her to trip and fall. I got up and tried to punch her in the face to knock her out, but she dodged and instead my punch hit the glass, which started to crack. "Uh-oh," I said just before the glass broke. I would be able to jump off before it gave out, but Black Cat couldn't, so I had to grab her as well and jump off. In hindsight, I probably didn't need to. The fall wasn't that high. But I guess it was better I did, because now both me and Black Cat were away from the museum and on the rooftop of a nearby building. She started attacking me even faster. I dodged most of her attacks, but she still managed to get a few small cuts on my chest. I jumped back a few feet to put some distance between myself and her, and firstly, shot a web at her face. While she tried to remove the webbing, I doubted she could without scratching up her face. I charged at her and knocked her down. I webbed her hands and feet to the ground. Now that she was more or less contained, I removed the webbing from her face. "Morning, sunshine," I said. "You ruined my score." That's kinda what I do, darlin', I said. Take names and kick butt? She tried to break free from the webs but couldn't. Yeah, that's not gonna work, I said. So, anyway, you got a name? Of course, I knew her name, but I was role-playing. Really? You're not gonna turn me in? Oh, I will, don't worry about that, I responded. I just need to kill some time. Like hell you do, she said. You could be killing time stopping other criminals. I think you're still here because you find me hot. A sheet, she had a point. Also, she was on the ground with her hands and feet webbed to the ground. That's kinda KNKY. Why can't it be both? I said. Fair enough. Name's Black Cat, by the way. Perfect, isn't it? Very creative. Did you come up with that one yourself? You're one to talk, Spider-Man. A sheet, she had a point there too. I guess I was throwing rocks from my house made of glass. At that moment my phone rang. It was Uncle Ben. I went to the other side of the roof for a bit of privacy. Yeah, Uncle Ben, what's up? I said. Pete, Aunt May wanted me to tell you to pick some cereal on your way back. Yeah, okay, I'll get it, I said. Anything else? No, where are you right now, by the way? It's getting late. I'm on my way home, don't worry, I assured him. Okay, be back before curfew, remember? Okay, sure, don't worry. I hung up and turned around to find Black Cat gone. She must have managed to cut through the webbing. I wasn't too pressed to chase after her. I was supposed to look after the little guy, and as far as Spider-Man's rogues gallery went, she was probably the least harmful to the little guy. All she did was steal from rich people who could probably afford to take the hit. Besides, I really needed to be heading home. Uncle Ben getting shot the night before my date with MJ would not be ideal. After getting the cereal for free from the convenience store that I had saved earlier that evening, I returned home, arriving about 10 minutes or so before 11. After giving Aunt May the cereal, I went up to my bedroom. I took my shirt off to examine any wounds from my fight earlier that evening. Black Cat's claws had just barely scraped my chest, so I wasn't really bleeding. Other than that, I was mostly fine. I turned around and walked over to my dresser, which was on the same wall as my window. I opened the drawer to get a new shirt, when I happened to glance out the window and saw MJ looking at me from her bedroom in the neighboring house. Her face became about as red as her hair and she quickly turned away when she saw me looking. And I quickly covered up my chest with the clean shirt in my hands. I quickly put on the shirt while she was looking away, before opening the window. Hi, I said. She looked back at me, her face still kinda red, and seeing that I now had a shirt on, said, Hey, gosh, I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to act like a creep. Nah, don't worry about it, I reassured her. I was pretty sure she hadn't deliberately been looking into my room. I should have drawn the curtains. In an alternate reality, a situation where I was caught shirtless by MJ could have ended up going in a very different direction, one that likely ended with some naughty things. But I wasn't gonna do that because A, the success chances of making a move right now would be extremely low, and B, we hadn't even gotten remotely close to a romantic relationship. This was the night before our first date. I didn't want to do anything to risk ruining that. Well, it wasn't the worst sight in the world, MJ said sheepishly, still blushing a little and not really looking my way. I chuckled a bit at that. Gee, thanks. Well, good night, Peter, she said. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Me too, I said. I promise you, it'll be one hell of a night. I don't doubt it, Tiger, she said with a smile. Today was the day. My date with Mary Jane Watson, the girl next door. And since I was Spider-Man, meaning that I can never catch a FING break, there was a 100% guarantee that every villain in the city would launch their evil schemes this evening. But hey, there was always the Fantastic Four to deal with those problems, right? Speaking of whom, I got a call from Reed Richards this morning, telling me that my new suit was ready. Sweet. I headed out after breakfast, arriving at the Baxter building a short time later. There were 4 elevators on the ground floor. 3 of them were regular elevators that only went up to the 30th floor where the Fantastic Four reception area was. The 4th elevator had the Fantastic Four insignia on it, and it went straight to their headquarters on the 31st floor and above. Dr. Richards had told me to come up to the 30th floor via one of the regular elevators, as the special elevator could only be summoned by a solenoid activator like the one on the F4 members' belts. He also said that the receptionist Roberta would clear me once I got to the reception area. As Reed had requested, I took one of the regular elevators up to the reception. Once there, Roberta, who appeared to just be a young woman behind the desk, but was actually a robot, greeted me. After I was cleared, a panel opened in the wall, revealing an elevator to the upper floors. Roberta told me that Dr. Richards was waiting for me in his lab on the 33rd floor. Dr. Richards was in his Fantastic Four costume, working on some other experiment. He didn't really notice me enter, or if he did, he didn't acknowledge me. I thought it would be rude to interrupt and by so doing, potentially ruin his work. So I just stood there like a dork, not really knowing what to do, other than just wait for him to notice me. After a minute or so of standing near the entrance of the lab, the door opened behind me and an attractive blonde woman entered. She was wearing the matching blue costume of the F4 as well. "Oh, hello there," she said to me with a smile. "You must be Peter." "I'm Sue Richards, Reed's wife." She extended her hand, I shook it. Sue looked at her husband, then back to me. How long have you been standing here?" A minute maybe?" I said. I didn't want to interrupt Dr. Richards, so. "That's sweet of you, but you really shouldn't have." "Reed," she called out to him. "Your guest is here." He looked up from his work and smiled when he saw me. Peter, you're here. How are you?" I was tempted to say, "Fantastic," but I opted for a simple, "Fine," instead because even I have my limits. "Your new suit's over here," Dr. Richards said, walking over to a table and picking up what seemed to be a wristband with a Spider-Man insignia on it. He handed it to me. "On the surface, it appears to just be a regular piece of Spider-Man merchandise," he said. "But if you tap the logo twice." That's when I realized that he was asking me to do exactly that. I did so, and the wristband quickly expanded into a full suit that covered my body, not unlike several characters in the MCU. "Hell yeah. Whoa, this is amazing," I said, and I meant it too. It was metal, but a really flexible kind of metal, like Spider-Man's suit in Endgame. The suit was also silver, so it wasn't painted yet. "I'm glad you like it," Reed said. "The wristband only responds to your fingerprints, so no one else can activate it. However, you can also add someone else's fingerprints to its database. That will allow that other person to activate the wristband by tapping on it twice. But I think this goes without saying that you should only do that, if at all, for someone you absolutely trust. Obviously," he continued, "the suit is immune to bullets, fire, electricity, and for the most part, explosions. It comes with night, thermal, and X-ray vision, as well as over 200 types of webbing, each specifically designed for their own individual purposes. It also has a personal user interface. Oh, and it has mechanical arms, too." Arms. At that moment, for mechanical arms, I'm talking Superior Spider-Man kind of arms, popped out of the back of my suit. That's sick," I said, literally bouncing up and down with excitement. "This is wonderful, Doc." "That's not all," he went on. "You can also choose what parts of the suit materialize or dematerialize, meaning that if, for example, you only want to take off the mask, then." Once again, he was asking me to do what he was saying. So I obeyed, concentrating on taking my mask off. Immediately, the mask dematerialized. "Oh God, that's so cool. Thank you so much." I know I sound like a broken record, but come on, it is amazing. "No problem, Mr. Parker," he said, chuckling. "Now, there is one last thing. I didn't paint the suit, as you can see. I figured you would want to do that yourself. So, be my guest." He showed me to a table with a bunch of robotic arms hovering over it and a computer terminal to the side. "You can use this." "Yeah, okay thanks," I said as I took off the suit. An hour later, I stepped back and took a look at my now-colored costume. The design I opted for was basically the Superior Spider-Man suit. The main reasons I went for that design were A. It's my favorite Spider-Man costume, B. It's my favorite Spider-Man costume, and C. It's my favorite Spider-Man costume. Nuff said. After leaving the Baxter building with an awesome new suit, I figured I'd probably do some light web slinging, maybe stop a few crimes here and there. Test out my new suit. Half an hour of FING around later, I learned that the new webbing types were seriously OP. There were electric webs, acidic webs that burned straight through metal pipes, cannonball webs that weren't sticky, but hard. Hard as in hard enough to leave bruises if a couple of them hit the same spot. The normal webbing had a few upgrades too. Mainly that it was stickier and a lot stronger. Probably the only reason I didn't end up killing someone while testing out my new webs was the AI that the suit came with. My own personal Jarvis, you could say. So, do you have a name? I asked her. Is it weird that I called it a her? I mean, it was a feminine voice. Do robots even have genders? My creator Dr. Reed Richards did not assign me a name, she said. Would you like to assign one as my new owner? Okay. I said. I wasn't quite sure what I was gonna go for. I had kinda been expecting Dr. Richards to already have a name for her. Does Gideon work? I asked, going for the first non-Marvel AI name I could think of. Yes, I too am extraordinarily creative. Yes, I quite like Gideon, it has a nice ring to it, she said. Okay, awesome. A thought came into my mind just then. Today was Sunday, meaning today was the last day of trials for the school football team. And Harry was trying out, so I should probably call him to see if he made it. Gideon? I said. Yes, Peter? Can you call Harry? Certainly. Harry's number and profile picture appeared on the top left side of my lenses with the word dialing written under. Harry picked up a few seconds later. Hey Pete, what's up? He said. Yo, Harry, how'd the trials go? Yeah, they just finished. The coach said I finished third in the final scoring. That's great. I said. Or, I don't know, is it? They only needed 2 guys. One for the starting lineup and 1 reserve. Oh, well, don't let it get you down, okay, Har? Yeah, no, don't worry about it, he said. He didn't sound particularly upset though, that's a good sign. I figured I didn't have much of a chance getting in anyway. Still, 3rd place is pretty good, even if I didn't make it in the team. But you know what'd really cheer me up? What? I asked. Beating your butt in Mortal Kombat, he said. I could almost hear his grin. It kinda made me smile myself. Care to drop by? Harry said. I feel like we haven't hung out in ages. Yeah, okay, I'll be over in a sec, I said. And for the record, I'm the one who always beats your butt. Yeah, we'll see about that. An hour later. Hey, so today's the big day, right? Harry said while the next round was loading. Your date with Mary Jane, Harry said. Don't tell me you forgot. No, I didn't forget, I said. I mean, how could I? This was my first ever date in both lives. Jesus, that's sad. Yeah, the date's tonight, I said. Still can't believe you got a date with MJ, Harry said, shaking his head. A month ago, the 2 of you hadn't even talked to each other and now you're going out. Jealous much? I said, teasing him slightly. Besides, you are way overestimating what's happening. This is just a friendly, first time, probably one-time thing. There might not even be a follow-up, depending on how it goes. And depending on how it goes, you 2 might end up a bit more than friends, Harry said with a hint of a smirk. Jesus Christ, Har, you're more invested in this date than I am, I said. Dude, I've watched you be a simp for Mary Jane for years, he said. Can you really blame me for getting excited, seeing my best friend finally go out with his crush? I let out a chuckle. Yeah, okay, I guess you kinda have a point there. Still a bit weird though. I spent quite some time picking out my clothes that evening. In the end, I was satisfied with how I looked. My clothes were casual, a nice t-shirt with a jacket on top and a, relatively, new pair of jeans. After making sure my hair looked fine, I left my room and went downstairs, jumping the last few steps. I was almost at the door when Uncle Ben called out to me from the living room. Hey, Peter! Were you off to bud? I thought you said you didn't have anything tonight. Ever since I had got bitten by the spider a little over a month ago, I had left the house more or less every night. I usually gave some sort of excuse for me leaving, be it tutorships with Liz, or internships with Kurt Connors. Most of the time I was telling the truth, because technically I was leaving the house for those reasons, but sometimes, like in the past week, I wouldn't actually have any of those commitments. But I guess at some point I must have told Ben that I was free tonight. So naturally he'd be a bit suspicious to where I was running off to and why. Didn't really see any harm in telling them the truth tonight, so might as well. I sort of have a date, I said. A date, said Aunt May, suddenly appearing from the kitchen and expressing quite a bit of interest. With whom? Is it Gwen? Ooh, or maybe that other girl you tutor, what's her name? Calm down, May, Uncle Ben said, chuckling to himself a bit. But really, who's the lucky girl, Peter? Aunt May said. I said. Really? Aunt May said, seemingly delighted at this piece of news. Oh, how wonderful. And you two are right next door, too. You can practically jump into each other's rooms and dash. I can't hear you, Aunt May, I said, covering my ears. Anyways, gotta go. I left the house. Mary Jane had specifically told me to not knock on her front door. She didn't say why, but I assumed it was to save me from meeting her dad, who I already knew wasn't a very likable person, so I'm not complaining. So instead, I just waited outside her house. A minute or so later, the front door opened and Mary Jane came out. She was dressed casually as well, but she still looked very pretty. Hey, I said. You look great. Ah, thank you, she said. You look good yourself. I hope I didn't keep you waiting too long. Nah, don't worry about it. You ready? Ready, Tiger, she said, smiling. Elsewhere in New York City, two men waited in an empty room on the top floor of an abandoned 4-story building. One of them, a scruffy-looking guy in his mid-30s named Mark, was observing the quiet street below. The street was empty. It was a quiet part of town, especially during the night, a few miles from the more populated docks and surrounding areas. A loud bang out here would go mostly unnoticed for a while. It was the perfect place to do what they were about to do. He turned to his partner sitting on the rooftop away from the edge. He was a young guy, early 20s maybe. This was his first job and he was nervous. His breathing was loud and shaky. He had a laptop open in his lap, tracking their target, a convoy coming from the docks that they were going to intercept. Hey, Tommy, Mark said, putting his hand on Tommy's shoulder. Calm down, it's gonna be all right. You're not gonna be part of any of the action, remember? You're just surveillance. Oh yeah, okay, Tommy said, looking up from the screen briefly. Here, have a cigarette. It'll calm you down, Mark said, taking one out from his pocket. Tommy took the cigarette, and Mark lit it for him. A few minutes went by before Tommy, now somewhat calmer, said, You got any idea what the boss is even after? Don't know, don't care, Mark said. Asking questions ain't my thing, getting paid is. Whatever the goblin wants, we're gonna do it. Tommy looked at the laptop screen and said, Okay, they're coming. Mark quickly took out his weapon, a strange-looking high-tech gun, from the briefcase open beside him and got into position. Hang back, Tommy, okay? Gladly. The rest of the crew were hiding in the alleyways of the street. There were 3 vehicles in the convoy. Mark's job was to take out 2 of those, the one in the front and the one at the rear, with specific orders to not damage the middle one. The others would take care of the rest. Whatever the goblin was after must be in the middle vehicle. How he knew it would be in that specific car was beyond Mark. Maybe the goblin had someone on the inside who gave him the info. That would explain the knowledge of the convoy's route as well, but frankly, Mark couldn't care less. The convoy, consisting of 3 black vans, passed in front of him. Mark took aim and fired. Instead of a bullet or a missile, a green ball of energy shot out and hit the first van, causing it to explode and the other 2 vehicles behind it to stop with a screech. The back doors of the 2 vans opened and a number of armed gunmen stepped out. Mark fired again, this time at the van at the rear. The van exploded, and since most of the gunmen were either inside or within feet of the van, they got taken out as well. This all happened in a few seconds. Now all that remained was the middle van and the few gunmen that had been inside. The van itself was mostly unscathed from the other 2 explosions, since the vehicles were a good 20 to 30 feet away from each other and the explosions weren't big enough to cause damage from that distance. The other members of the gang emerged from the alleyway, all wearing jack-o'-lantern masks on their heads. Outnumbered 2 to 1, the gunmen from the van tried to fight but were overwhelmed, and all 6 of them were killed. The cargo in the middle van, what they were after tonight, was heroin. A lot of it. Millions of dollars worth of it. The gangsters loaded the drags onto their truck and drove off into the night. Peter, have you even been listening to me? MJ said as we exited the theater. Of course. Do you think I'd ignore you? I said. So what was my favorite part of the play? I've said it at least 3 times, MJ asked me. Oh, the ending. I said. MJ glared at me. Dear Lord, her eyes were so incredibly green. It was kind of distracting, honestly. I trailed off. Okay, I'll be honest, I really hadn't been paying attention to the play all that much. I had taken MJ out to see the importance of being earnest. MJ was a theater-loving gal, so I figured she'd like to see a play. Also, it just so happened to be the play from Spider-Man, but as it transpired, it was also boring. To me anyway. MJ loved it. You're lucky you're cute, Parker, so I'll let you off the hook this time around, MJ said, punching me in the arm lightly. Hey, I feel I've earned a bit more than just cute, I objected. If you're referring to the incident the other night, then I'll just say that seeing you shirtless wasn't the worst thing in the world. I'll take that as a compliment, I said. Also, I wouldn't mind if you could maybe return the favor sometime. Peter, she slapped my arm, but grinned nonetheless. You know, I never would have thought that you'd be a perv. Coming from the girl who was peeking at me shirtless, I snapped back. Hey, I already apologized for that, MJ said. Also, it's not being a perv so much as it is being a teenager, I said. Hormones and all that. MJ said skeptically. Yeah, okay, sure. I heard police sirens. A truck zoomed by, followed by a few police cars. Up ahead, 3 more police cars came out of a road to the left, blocking the truck's way. The truck was now sandwiched with police cars both in front and behind it. That's when the back doors of the truck opened and armed gunmen climbed out. Of course, this shit would happen on the same effing street I was at with MJ on my date. I grabbed MJ by the arm and pulled her into a nearby alleyway. I had to go back there and help out. Sure, the police could handle it, but I could handle it better. I have a bulletproof suit after all. All right, listen to me, I said once we came out the other end of the alley. You dash. I know. MJ said, I know, you need me to get as far away from here as possible and you have to go help the cops. Well, wait, what? I said, completely taken aback by her response. Dude, I know you're Spider-Man. Just go already. MJ somehow knew I was Spider-Man. What the F dash? Hey, focus. I ran back into the alley and double-tapped the wristband. It expanded into the full suit, in all its superior Spider-Man-esque glory, in barely a second. Now there were a bunch of gangsters whose only real weapon were guns, and there was me with a badass suit immune to bullets. You can clearly guess how it went down. Less than a few minutes later, the dudes were all being shoved into the backs of police cars. The truck had been full of heroin, but that wasn't really my concern. What was my concern was that the criminals had all been wearing jack-o'-lantern masks, a pretty obvious insignia of a particular Spider-Man villain. What was more was that one of the guys had a weird-looking gun that probably shot something a bit more advanced than bullets. Not that he got a chance to use it though, courtesy of yours truly. I guess I should be a bit more alert, but then again, I do know who the Goblin was, probably Norman, if not him then Harry, so I wasn't particularly stressed. I could literally swing by the penthouse right now. That's probably what Peter Parker would do, had he known what I knew. But I'm not Peter Parker. Right now, Mary Jane was waiting for me to show up and continue our date. I wanted to get back to that. I know, Uncle Ben would be disappointed at my lack of responsibility blah blah blah. I'll drop by the Osborn residence tomorrow and take care of the whole deal, whatever. So I returned to the alleyway I had come from. MJ was waiting for me there, hands on her hips. Okay, how the hell did you know I was Spider-Man? I asked her, and more importantly, did you tell anyone? No, I did not tell anyone, I'm not stupid, she said. And I saw you sneak into your room at like midnight about a week ago. You were in full costume and you swung in through the window. That would explain it. I think I knew what night she was talking about. It had been Late and I had been super tired, so I had just straight up crashed into my room without really thinking about taking any of the precautions I normally took, entering the house after Spidey work. In my defense, I was tired, and it had been midnight. MJ should have been asleep. Speaking of which, why were you even up that late? And why were you peeking into my room? I asked. I had gotten up to get some water. When I came back to my room, I saw you swing into yours in full Spider-Man costume. At first I thought I was just tired and hallucinating, because you are the least likely person to be Spider-Man. No offense. None taken? But after seeing how swole you were, I was like, maybe he is Spider-Man. Also, you had just flown in through your bedroom window. That was pretty convincing too. Okay, then, MJ, you are a serious perv. Hey, it's not being a perv so much as it is being a teenager, MJ said with the biggest sheet-eating grin I had ever seen on her. Hormones and all that, right? Jesus Christ, woman. I looked around. You want to get out of here? I asked MJ. No, Peter, I want to stand around in dark, dingy alley all night long. I'd love that. I let that one slide because, to be fair, it had been a dumb question on my part. I grabbed her by the waist. Hold on tight, I told her. And then I jumped up, and with her holding on to me, began swinging away through the city. I honestly wasn't super concerned with the fact that MJ knew I was Spider-Man. I could trust her. Knowing my identity may kinda endanger her, but not really unless someone finds out my identity and attacks her to get to me, or if someone finds out that she knows Spider-Man's real name. Both those scenarios are pretty unlikely. All I needed to do was just be a bit careful, which, in hindsight, I hadn't really been. We landed on the rooftop of a tallish building. Not too tall, but tall enough that we had a pretty good view of the city. MJ peered over the edge of the building. Oh Jesus, that's really high, she said and stepped back. So, MJ? I said, removing my mask. Can I ask you something? Fire away, Tiger, she said. Why did you agree to go out with me? The question had popped into my mind after the conversation we had just had. Maybe, probably, I was being insecure, but given that MJ had ditched me that night in the backyard to go out with Flash Thompson and company, there was a chance that she had only gone out with me because I was, well, a superhero. MJ looked at me for a bit, then said, No, I didn't agree to go out with you just because you're Spider-Man. I'm not shallow, Peter. But you left me that night in the backyard, I said. When Flash Thompson and his cronies showed up. MJ sighed. I know, and I'm sorry about that, Peter. I didn't mean to ditch you like that. You're right, that was shallow. MJ walked closer to me. But I wasn't lying, Peter. I went out with you because I like you as a person. This might sound weird, given that we only really started talking to each other about 2 weeks ago, but I feel comfortable around you. At ease. I don't really feel that way around my other friends. With them, I feel like I have to keep up an act. I can't really be myself with them because I'm afraid they'll abandon me. But with you, it's different. Okay, I said, kinda embarrassed. Gosh, now I feel like an a-hole. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel like that. No, I was being insecure. I shouldn't have asked you that question. I should have known you'd be better than that. Peter, it's not a big deal. Anyone would have thought the same after what I did that night in the backyard. I sighed. Okay, you know what? I could use some web slinging. You up for another ride? Definitely, MJ responded. And now that I know you're pretty good at it, I'll try to keep my eyes open. Maybe it wasn't the perfect date, but at least. Okay, yeah, it wasn't super great. But cut me some slack. It was my first ever date. Not just that, I'm a socially awkward superhero that can't catch a FING break. So, all things considered, it could have gone a lot worse. After school ended the next day, I was getting my stuff from my locker and was about to leave when a familiar voice called out to me from behind. Turning around, I saw Gwen running up to me. Hey Gwen, I said, waiting for her to catch up to me. Hey Peter, she said eagerly. Hey, so, did you notice anything weird during 7th PRD? I recalled 7th PRD. Nothing in particular had happened. Nothing that I could recall, anyway. No, not really. Why? Dude, she said, looking at me as if I was the dumbest person in the world. MJ couldn't take her eyes off you. Are you really that blind? No, I'm not blind, it's just that I'm used to having girls drool all over me, so it's nothing new. Huh, she said dryly. But seriously, did the date really go that well? Well, I guess you could say dash. No way, a date? A new voice cut me off. Flash showed up with a few of his friends. You're not telling me Puny Parker got a date? What kind of self-respecting girl would ever want to dash? Hey, Peter. MJ came bouncing up to me from behind Flash. She gave me a quick hug and said, "Last night was amazing. I had so much fun. We should definitely do it again sometime." Oh, I said, smirking a bit. Yeah, definitely, I'd love that, MJ. She had to have been lurking nearby. Her timing was too good to have been a mere coincidence. So, anyway, what were you saying, Flash? I looked at him innocently. So did MJ, God bless that girl. Well, wait, what? Flash sputtered in disbelief. You, Mary Jane, went out with him? With Parker? MJ nodded cheerfully. And I loved it. He's a real gentleman. Flash looked lost for words. It was honestly really satisfying to watch. Well, it was a blast talking to you, Flash, I said. But if that's all, then we'll be on our way. See you around, buddy. Me and MJ turned around and left the school building together. Gwen just waved at me from behind Flash and went to her locker to get her stuff. I did notice Liz, who had just arrived and only caught the latter part of our conversation, looking at MJ with a bit of jealousy, I dare say? That's weird. Why would she be jealous? Unless, no, that's not very likely. Once outside the school, I turned to MJ and said, "Thanks." What for? For, having amazing timing. Oh, that's nothing, she said, grinning a bit. And I hope I've made it up to you, after, ditching you. That night at the backyard. Hey, but that was weeks ago, I said. I mean, you were the one who brought it up last night. I suppose that's fair. Thanks, anyway. And, just so we're clear, I really did have fun last night, Mary Jane said. Even if it wasn't exactly what I had been expecting. Thanks. I mean to say, out of all the dates I've ever been to, last night was by far the most memorable. And not just because, well, I get it, I said. Thanks. So, wanna walk home together? She asked me. Honestly, it's tempting, I said. But I really need to do something. Spider-related, I mean. Oh, I see, she said, looking a bit downcast. But I do have a few minutes, I said. So, we could alternatively take a faster route. An alternative, I see what you mean. We went into an alleyway a bit away from the school. After checking to see if the coast was clear, I double-tapped my wristband and it expanded into the full suit. Where did you even get a suit like that? She said in a bit of awe. Reed Richards made it for me, I said. Mr. Fantastic, I mean. In hindsight, I probably should have said something like, I made it myself, or whatever, because saying someone else made it for me takes out a bit of the cool factor. But at least I was honest, right? All right, hold on tight, I told her. We took off, swinging through the city. I did a few tricks here and there, just to give MJ a bit of a thrill. Nothing too extreme though, just to be safe. Yes, I did have an urgent Spidey matter to take care of, namely the Green Goblin, but even with me having fun web-slinging with MJ, I still managed to drop her off at home, or rather, a short distance from home, a good 20 minutes earlier the bus would have. After bidding her farewell, I set off back into the city once more. As I was swinging through the city, a thought crossed my mind. I knew who the Green Goblin was, sure, but how would I prove it? Was proving even my job? I suppose I could just do what Batman does in Batman Begins, where he just beats up Falcone and leaves him at the crime scene. But in this case, there wasn't necessarily a crime scene. I'd have to find Norman at the Goblin's lair, beat him up there, and leave him for the cops to find. But there was one problem with that as well. As far as I knew, the Green Goblin hadn't made a public appearance yet, meaning that he wasn't on the police's radar, and so, beating up Norman Osborn, a respected billionaire, businessman and scientist, unconscious is just gonna make me look bad. Alternatively, I could wait for Green Goblin to make an appearance and take him down there and then. But waiting might potentially result in more incidents like last night. I searched the city, with little dedication though, since now I had thought about the technical problems of my approach. I couldn't find Norman at his penthouse or at Oscorp. Both scenarios I used X-ray vision to see through the walls form outside, so I decided to just go home and take a shower. My tutorship with Liz starts in about an hour. A bit later, I met up with Liz at the cafe we usually go to for our evening lessons. After giving her some work to do, I began to think about my next move against the goblin. After about an hour, Liz looked up from her textbook and said, "All right, Petey, I'm done. You can quiz me now." I took the book from her. I was a bit doubtful about how well she had prepared the topics I'd given her, since she usually took longer. "All right, Liz, tell me, how are prokaryotic cells different from eukaryotic ones?" Prokaryotic cells don't have a prominent nucleus and lack other membrane-bounded organelles. Their cell walls are made of peptidoglycan, I said. "Yes, that. And, they're about 10 to 100 times smaller than eukaryotic cells." I asked her a few more questions. She answered them all more or less correctly. After about 10 minutes, I said, "Well, consider me impressed, Liz. You did a pretty good job. You're improving a lot." She beamed at me. I guess my approval really meant a lot to her. Not gonna lie, she's cute when she's not a bully. "Well," I said, looking at my watch. "Actually, we finished today's work pretty early. I guess we could call it a night then?" Yeah, sure, that sounds good," Liz said. After exiting the cafe, Liz turned to me and said, "Hey, Peter? Would you mind walking me home?" "Oh, yeah, okay, sure," I said. I used to ask Liz if she wanted me to walk her home, but she always said no. So, I stopped asking after a few times. It was kinda weird to see her suddenly ask me to do it now. Her house wasn't too far from the cafe, about a 15-minute walk or so away. While we were walking, Liz said, "Hey, Petey, can I ask you something? If you don't mind? It's kind of personal though." "Nah, go ahead. What's the deal with you and MJ?" "You don't really have to answer if you're not comfortable," she said. Judging from her tone, it seemed it had been on her mind for a while now. "Wait, she's not actually jealous, is she?" "We're just friends," I said. "We went out last night, but it was more of a friendly thing. I took her out to see a play, grab a bite, that sort of deal. It wasn't like, you know?" "Okay, I get it, just friends," she said, sounding a bit relieved. "Why did you ask?" I said. "Nothing, just curious," she said, trying to shrug it off. "You're not jealous, are you?" I said in a teasing manner. "Jealous? And no, of course I'm not jealous. Why on earth would you think that?" She didn't sound upset with me, more like flustered. "I was just kidding, relax. I mean, I like you either, what?" Liz said. "Just not in the sense that I'd be jealous if you went out with someone." Sure," I said skeptically. "You're in love with me, I get it, you don't have to lie." "Peter, shut up," she blushed and slapped my arm. I let out a laugh. God, messing with her was so much fun. We arrived at her home a few minutes later. "Well, good night, Petey," she said, and gave me a hug, which caught me off guard a bit, but not in a bad way really. She was warming up to me and I wasn't gonna complain. "Good night," I said. "I'll see you at school tomorrow." She walked up to the front door, but before opening it she turned around and said, "Oh, by the way, Peter." "Yeah. Flash's birthday party is next week. I don't know if you got the invite, but drop by anyway, alright?" "I'm not sure if Flash will like me being there," I said. "Don't worry about it, I'll talk to him," she said. Drop by," I said. "So, I just got invited to a party by the girl who wouldn't even look my way a month ago. I'm pretty sure that counts as a win. I'll certainly consider it one. Even if my spider shenanigans today hadn't been quite so successful, at least Peter Parker was getting a win, which he, that is to say, really deserved." I went into a nearby alleyway and changed into my Spider-Man costume. The search for the Green Goblin Part 2, Electric Boogaloo, was underway. As I was swinging through town, I swung past Kurt Connor's lab. It was the first time I was seeing it since the lizard incident about a week ago. As I was swinging by, I noticed a figure crawl into the window. It was probably a robber or something. They could have picked a better target than a science lab for their heist, but who am I to judge? I landed outside the lab. The robber was already inside, ruffling through papers. I entered through the same window they had come from silently. The thief, whoever they were, had their back turned to me, but the long, silver hair and those killer curves told me everything I needed to know in order to identify them. "Here, kitty cat," I said. Black Cat turned around and faced me. Well, if it isn't my favorite hero," she said, smirking. "I see you've got a new costume. I like it, even if I can't really scratch you all that well anymore." "Well, you could still try to scratch the metal with your claws and hurt my ears," I said. "Oh, please, and make my own ears bleed in the process as well? Nice try, but even I'm not that kind of psychopath." "I see you're still being a bad kitty," I said. "Shame on you. Do I need to teach you a lesson?" "I didn't know you were into K&KY stuff, Spider-Man," she said. "But I'm not really complaining." "That's not what I meant. Get your mind out of the demon gutter," I said. "But seriously, you do realize that you are screwed, right? I beat you once before, and this time I have a better suit." "Oh, I'm not planning on doing any fighting tonight," she said. "So you turning yourself in?" "Not exactly, sweetie. I've got backup." She threw a smoke grenade at me. My vision was obscured for about a second before my suit's lenses automatically adjusted to the smoke, allowing me to see somewhat better. I glimpsed Black Cat jumping out the window she had come from, and followed her. The second I jumped out the window, though, my spider sense went nuts. But before I could react in any way, something heavy flew into me. Whatever it was, it could fly, and it flew off with me, dropping me onto the rooftop of a nearby building. I quickly stood up. The object I had collided with was hovering over the rooftop in front of me. This was him, the villain I had been trying to find. Spider-Man's Joker. The Green Goblin, hovering on his glider. I gotta say, Sam Raimi really knew what he was doing with the Green Goblin in his trilogy. Because this version was almost identical to the one in those movies. Same armor design, same glider and all. "An honor to finally meet you, Spider-Man," Goblin said. "Consider me a fan." I didn't say anything. Instead, I activated my X-ray vision to see if it was Norman or Harry under the mask, with my money on the former. The answer? Neither. To be honest, I didn't know who this man was. It wasn't Norman Osborn, and it wasn't Harry. I couldn't recognize the guy at all. He kinda looked like Tommy Wiseau, but a bit less alien-looking and minus the long hair. Even weirder, the facial recognition software couldn't find a match on him either. Something was seriously off here. "I don't want to fight, Spider-Man," Green Goblin said. "I just want to talk." He stared at me for a moment and said, "Relax. Let's discuss matters like grown adults, instead of fighting like little children. What do you want?" "What do I want?" he said, gazing at the sky in mock thought. "My face on the $1 bill. I don't think anyone'd ever use a $1 bill again if that were the case," I said. "I want a partnership, Spider-Man, with you." He went on, he gestured at the city. "They like to call us freaks. But we're not less than human. In fact, we're more. You see, Spider-Man, you and I are not so different." "Cut the sheet, Goblin," I said. "We're nothing alike. I put asshats like you in prison." "Oh, believe me, Spider-Man," he said with a chuckle, before leaning forward. "I'm unlike anything you've ever faced before. The Vulture, the Lizard, the dozens of two-bit thugs, throw them all together, and even then, they're nothing even close to what I could be if I wanted. But I'm not here for that. No, I'm here to extend the hand of friendship. You see, All right, I wasn't gonna hang around and listen to his grand monologue or whatever he had to say. I lunged at him and landed a mean right hook to his face, catching him off guard. I assume he'd come prepared for anything I might do, but I was pretty fast. Or maybe this guy, whoever he was, only had the suit and not the chemical formula the Green Goblin usually has. He flew back from the hit, but still managed to stay on his glider. I was about to follow up with another attack, but he threw a pumpkin bomb at me. It hit me square in the chest and exploded. I went flying back, almost falling off the edge of the building, not that that would have been a problem. The explosion hadn't hurt, owing to my awesome suit, which completely absorbed the blast. "You have 48 hours, Spider-Man, to consider my offer," Goblin said. "I'll be here when your time runs out, awaiting your decision." Thus, wisely. He then threw 2 more pumpkin bombs at me. I hadn't managed to get back up yet, so I couldn't dodge them. These ones, however, didn't explode. Instead they released a greenish gas. I suppose it was some kind of drag to make me pass out or whatever, but the suit filtered the air coming in through the mask, so I wasn't affected. What the gas did do was cloud my vision. Gideon automatically activated smoke vision again, so that stopped being a problem after a second, but by then the goblin had disappeared. I won't lie, I was kinda set at myself. I had let the Green Goblin and Black Cat both slip out of my hands. Admittedly, I had been a bit taken aback by the fact that it wasn't Norman or Harry under the mask, rather a complete stranger. That begged the question, who was this new mystery man? How the F did he get the armor and equipment from, presumably, Oscorp? Did he get Black Cat to do it? I assumed they were working together, since Black Cat had mentioned backup. Tonight and the goblin had swooped in just moments later. More than that, what had she stolen from the lab? I honestly didn't know. I suppose the latter I'd find out tomorrow since my internships were starting again. There were a lot of confusing things going on. For now, the best I could do was keep an eye out for any more Goblin or Goblin Gang activity until my deadline, and do my best to figure out the mystery in the meanwhile. I'll do better next time we come face to face. I'll make sure of that, and this time, actually get rid of whoever it was under the mask once and for all. The Green Goblin, regardless of whoever was under the mask, was not someone to be taken lightly. The next day, I was waiting for the school bus at the local stop when MJ came up next to me. "Hi, Peter," she said brightly. Well, she looks like she's in a happy mood. That made one of us, anyway. I was exhausted, having barely gotten 2 hours of sleep last night, as I had stayed up late working on something for my upcoming confrontation against the goblin. "Hey," I said. "You look chipper." She nodded. "Flash's birthday is next week, and he asked me to come." She was quiet for a moment, then spoke again. I know he probably didn't invite you, but you can always come with me if you want," she offered. I thought about that. I was probably gonna go, but right now I was debating whether or not to tell her Liz had already invited me. If I did, then MJ might get jealous. If I didn't, that could end up causing a whole other host of problems. If there's one thing worth learning from shitty teen rom-coms that I only watch to make fun of, it's that lying about things like this comes back to bite you in the butt. Come to think of it, that's actually a decent message. Too bad those movies focused more on romanticizing toxic relationships. Even though I've technically been lying ever since I was reincarnated. But how exactly do I even be honest about things like reincarnation without people thinking me crazy? And I can't really tell people my identity either. Not without putting them at risk. Heroes like Iron Man could afford to reveal their identity. Tony Stark was an influential billionaire with only a small group of people close to him, and he could easily protect them. My situation was quite different, although I do intend to get rich too, eventually. I digress. Anyway, I decided to put my faith in MJ and tell her about getting invited. We weren't really a thing yet, and she also knew my relationship with Liz was just tutor to tea, and at best cordial, so she might not get upset, after all. Yeah, about that, I said, rubbing the back of my neck. "I'm already going." "Really?" She sounded surprised. "Did Flash invite you too?" No, it wasn't Flash," I said. Liz invited me, last night after we finished studying. She said she'd talked to Flash about letting me come." "Oh cool. That was nice of her," she said, looking straight ahead. I glanced at her. She looked back at me. "What?" "Nothing," I said. I thought I heard just the faintest trace of annoyance in her tone. It was barely there. I might have imagined it. God, I hope I imagined it. The goblin business was a pain in the butt to begin with. I did not need teen drama cluttering my life as well. I just hoped telling her hadn't been a bad move. Lord knows I don't understand girls. So, today was the day when our internships at Columbia would start up again. I had wondered if they would be delayed again because of the break-in last night, but apparently not. I guess whatever Black Cat took, if anything at all, must not have been noticed missing. We hadn't really fought exactly, so the lab wasn't wrecked, and I assume Black Cat would have dealt with any security cameras inside the lab beforehand. Standing on the steps outside the lab a couple of hours after school ended, I was a bit nervous, considering how the others were still probably set at me. "You okay?" Gwen asked me. "Yeah, I'm fine," I replied. "If you're worried about the others, don't be," she said. "I'm sure they'll have cooled down by now, don't worry." God bless this girl. Just because she found it in her heart to forgive me in a week doesn't necessarily mean the others would too. And I was pretty sure the reason Gwen had forgiven me so quickly was because of my near-death experience with the vulture. Her concern had overpowered her anger, and I guess she'd found it difficult to stay angry afterwards. Disregarding these thoughts for the meanwhile, I took a deep breath and entered the lab. Here goes nothing. Eddie was in the main lab, sitting on a stool while scrolling through his phone, presumably waiting for Kurt and Martha Connors. He looked up from his phone when we entered. He beamed and said, "Oh, hey Gwen." His smile faltered when he saw me. "I see you're here too." I was about to retort, but Gwen spoke. "Peter, could you give me and Eddie a minute?" "Sure." Gwen pulled Eddie to other side of the room, away from Peter. Eddie, listen to me," Gwen said quietly. Eddie sighed. He could tell what was coming, even if he was a bit confused as to why Gwen was siding with Peter. "Okay, go ahead. I know you're still mad at Peter, but please, cut him some slack," Gwen said. Cut him some dash? Eddie interrupted. "What? You're not serious, are you? He ditched us, remember? We were literally up against an 8-foot-tall lizard that just so happened to be our professor," Gwen retorted. "That's already terrifying as it is. Besides, he's only 17. But you're also 17, Gwen. And you didn't run away," Eddie said. "Look, I know Peter's a good kid, but he could have at least stayed to help us out with the cure." Gwen sighed. "Okay, remember the vulture?" she said. "Crazy guy with mechanical wings?" Yeah, the guy who broke out of prison a while back. Fantastic Four took him down," Eddie recalled. "Spider-Man had also fought him, hadn't he?" "Yes, that one," Gwen confirmed. "Well, when he broke out, he flew past Midtown High and attacked Harry Osborn. Apparently, he had some grudge with Harry's dad. I don't really know, and that's not important. When he tried to attack Harry, Peter pushed Harry out of the way and got swooped up himself." "Christ, that was Peter?" "The news said it was just a student, I didn't know which," Eddie said, taken aback by this. "Yeah, well, Peter saved Harry, even though he himself could have gotten hurt or worse," Gwen went on. "I know, he ran away when we could have used him. I was mad, but I think what he did against the vulture deserves some credit, right?" Eddie looked at Gwen skeptically. Eddie thought there was a decent chance that Peter had only accidentally gotten picked up by the vulture. But he hadn't been there, so he couldn't say for sure. Furthermore, Gwen had been there. She had seen what happened, and it had apparently been enough to redeem Peter in her eyes. Eddie sighed, looked at Peter, then back at Gwen. "Fine, whatever." "Okay, thanks for understanding." Yeah, whatever. Not that Eddie was gonna deliberately bully him in the first place. He had more intended to give Peter the cold shoulder or just avoid him. I don't know what Gwen said to Eddie, but in our limited interaction for the rest of the day, he was somewhat nicer to me for the rest of the day, although it seemed a tad bit forced at times. Kurt and Martha Connors came out of their office about 5 minutes or so later, and we began our day's work. Both of them treated me more or less the same way they did before the lizard incident. In a polite, friendly manner, that is. Although Martha's niceness seemed a bit forced sometimes, like Eddie's. A few slightly uncomfortable hours later, after we had finished our work, Gwen and I packed up our things and left the lab. Eddie had already left by then. It wasn't until the two of us had exited the lab and were walking down the steps that I realized I had forgotten my phone inside. I told Gwen to wait for a moment and dashed back inside. The main lab was empty. I spotted my phone on a table near the door of the office and made my way over to retrieve it. I was about to leave when I heard voices from the office. The door was slightly ajar and I could hear Kurt and Martha talking quietly. Now, I'm not one to eavesdrop on someone's personal matters, mostly, anyway, but what I heard caught my attention. "It's gone," Kurt was saying. "What do you mean, gone?" Martha said. I thought you said you were going to throw it away after the disaster last week. I destroyed the remaining serum but Kurt stammered. But what, Kurt? Martha demanded. Kurt sighed. I kept the research papers. I don't know why. Maybe I hoped I could, one day, perfect it or something. Were they talking about the lizard formula? Makes sense. What else could the disaster last week refer to? And it's stolen. That means that the formula was what Black Cat was after the other night. She must have taken it while I was busy fighting the goblin. That begged the question, why would the new goblin need the formula? Assuming they were working together, of course. There was silence for a moment. Then Martha Connors spoke. Who could have wanted it in the first place? I don't know, Kurt replied. There was a moment's silence in the office, before Kurt spoke again, saying, I think we should let the police know. What? No dash. But then they might arrest you for being the lizard. Martha protested. Maybe I deserve it. I shouldn't have done what I did. It was stupid and reckless of me. I shouldn't have known better, Kurt said. Besides, if we don't do something then, well, who knows what harm the formula might cause in the wrong hands. Heck, look what it did in the right hands. I had been leaning too close to the door to try and listen. Martha happened to glance at the ajar door and saw me standing. Peter? What are you doing? She demanded angrily, and rightfully so. I had been eavesdropping on their private conversation. All right, what do I do now? I had to do something, otherwise I could get kicked off the internship. And that would not look good on my resume. I was looking for my phone. I said. It was technically the truth. And why on earth do you think your phone would be here, in this room? Martha said angrily. Martha, please calm down, Kurt pleaded. No, Kurt, I will not calm down. Peter's behavior isn't acceptable. What he did last week was understandable at the least, that he'd be scared, but eavesdropping like this isn't right. All right, this crap. I was tired of the lizard incident being brought up to my face. I was tired of my friends thinking I was some PP who ran off in the middle of a crisis because he was scared. I had been a loser in my previous life, and I had been a loser in this one long enough. Okay, listen to me, I said. I closed the office door behind me, pulled back my sleeve, and double-tapped the Spider-Man wristband. It quickly expanded into the full suit. Their jaws dropped. Spider-Man? Kurt said in disbelief. How dash? The spider bite, I said simply. The spider bite, oh yes, of course. Martha sat down on a chair, taken aback quite a bit by the sudden revelation. Peter, you had been helping us all along that night, and I didn't know, I dash. Don't apologize, Doc, it's fine really, I said. I deactivated the suit and it shrunk back into the wristband. Luckily there hadn't been any cameras in the office. I had revealed my identity because I was tired of the way the lizard incident kept affecting my life, and also maybe because I was in trouble, not to get them to apologize. Just don't tell anyone. Martha nodded and regained her composure. We get why you didn't stay that night now, but you still shouldn't eavesdrop like that again. Understood? We'll let it pass this time, but not again. I nodded in understanding. She did have a point, even if my eavesdropping might help them in the long run. Now, about the whole, missing formula business, I said, changing the subject. I actually have a bit of information to share regarding that as well. That's why what you guys were saying caught my attention. Sorry about that, by the way. I told them about last night's encounter with Black Cat at the lab, and the fight with Green Goblin that had followed. They told me everything they knew, or rather suspected, but I learned nothing new in particular. I had heard everything from outside the office. After we had exchanged intel, I remembered that Gwen was probably still waiting for me outside the lab. So, Kurt told me to drop by the lab later that evening to discuss our next move in detail. I ran out of the lab and met up with Gwen outside. There you are. What took you so long? She asked. Sorry, I couldn't find the DMN phone, I said apologetically. One might question the intelligence of what I had just done, revealing my identity like that. But I was fine with it. I know I had said earlier that I couldn't tell my identity to just anyone, but it was still good to have someone who knows. The Fantastic Four knew, but they had bigger fish to fry, and I couldn't go to them for everything. Mary Jane also knows, but I meant someone who might actually be able to help me. No offense to MJ. And at least they wouldn't think of me as a coward anymore. Plus, the odds of Curt Connors turning into a scaly monster again seemed low, so I don't have to worry about the lizard coming after me or anyone I cared about. He seemed remorseful, so I doubted he would ever do something like that again. Or at least, he wouldn't do it without a whole bunch of testing. And if he did decide to perfect the formula, I'd help him all the way. You know what? That is what I should do once I get the formula back. Work with him to fix it, do something to help people as Peter Parker, rather than as Spider-Man for once. Put Peter's big brain to good use. I headed home and took a shower. I needed to get to the bottom of the goblin business, obviously. My biggest advantage previously had been my knowledge of the goblin's identity. But that bit of info had turned out to be useless, as it hadn't been Norman Osborn under the mask, nor anyone I really recognized. To add to that, even Gideon hadn't been able to recognize him in any database. The Goblin Gang was also a no-go. The incident the night of my date had been their first and only public appearance yet. I also needed to retrieve the lizard formula before it could cause any damage in the wrong hands. To do that, I needed to get to the Goblin because for some reason he needs it. But like I said, I didn't have a clue who the new guy was. That was a problem. I could try a few things currently. First, track down Black Cat and try to get her to answer my questions. But the chances of success there were quite low. Black Cat wouldn't rat out her clients, that'd be bad for her rep if word got out. Plus, even if she did help, it wouldn't be without some sort of catch. She'd definitely ask for something in return, and I did not want to be indebted to a criminal, for obvious reasons. Second, try snooping around at Oscorp. The tech the Goblin had been using was probably from Oscorp, which meant there had probably been some sort of break-in, meaning I just might be able to find some useful information. But breaking in and sneaking around Oscorp was quite risky, even with my super cool suit that I totally didn't deserve, although admittedly, self-insert protagonists rarely ever bother to earn anything, they just take more often. Now, both those options had their risks. On top of that, they also had a low chance of success. That meant that for the meanwhile, my best course of action was to prepare myself for my upcoming battle against the Goblin. If I succeeded, the Goblin Gang would be left leaderless, or at least it would be somewhat weakened. Goblin's capture could help potentially investigations a lot too. Since I had first gotten it, I had been thinking about a potential upgrade for the suit. I had started figuring out the mechanics in my head since. Last night's brief fight with the Goblin had prompted me into starting actual work on it, and since I was on the clock, I had started it immediately. I had thrown together a rough outline last night instead of sleeping, and sort of fine-tuned a few details during school. The idea was simple enough, and taken from Black Panther's suit in the MCU. It absorbed the force of an impact, stored it, then released it when needed for combat purposes. The design was far trickier, however. Luckily, Peter was DMN smart, and I was able to figure out the mechanics after a bit of brainstorming. What I had in mind were a number of small chips that would be placed throughout the suit. The chips could absorb the kinetic energy from any impact within a certain range and store it. The energy could be released either through them, or it could be channeled to a particular part like my fist. That was just the synopsis. The full design had a whole bunch more details and technical aspects. Like I said, it was a rough sketch currently, but it was a start. And now I also had Curt and Martha Connors. They may be biologists, but they were both DMN smart. They would probably be able to help. I stepped out of the shower, changed, grabbed the notebook containing the notes, and was about to head back into the city when there was a knock on my bedroom door. I opened the door and saw Uncle Ben standing outside in the hallway. "Hey, buddy," he said. "Can I come in?" I gazed back into the room. It was fairly clean and there wasn't anything Spider-Man related lying around, so I said okay. He came in and sat down on the bed. "Listen, son, your aunt and I are a bit worried about you," he said. "Okay?" I said unsurely. "You spend most of the day up in your room. Other times you're out of the house doing whatever," he said. I didn't say anything, but I wasn't sure I liked the direction this conversation seemed to be going. "Now, don't get me wrong, we're not mad at you or anything," Uncle Ben went on. "You're a good kid, you're a teenager, you need your space. I guess what I'm trying to say is there something you want to tell us? Something bothering you?" I looked at him for a moment, then replied, shaking my head, "No, I'm fine. Really. It's just that schoolwork keeps me busy. Sometimes I need to, go to the library to study." Like I said earlier, I couldn't tell people my identity, even if I had sort of thrown that out of the window with Connors. For now, at least, I'll have to lie to Uncle Ben. I wasn't proud of it. "Don't you have your computer to help you with that?" he asked. "I do. But, sometimes I can't find what I need on the internet. So, I have to go to the library." He looked at me for a moment with a strange sort of knowing look in his eyes. I wondered if he bought the excuse, but then he said, "Okay, if you say so. But, keep in mind, Pete, if there's anything bothering you, anything at all, you can always talk to me or your aunt, all right?" I nodded. "All right, will do." Uncle Ben got up. He patted me on the shoulder and headed towards the door. "Hey, Uncle Ben," I said. He turned around to look at me. "You're a pretty good dad," I said. Yeah, it's the line from Tessum, but it's a good line, and it still fit." And seeing the happiness flash across his face as I said those words was worth it. "You're a great son too, Peter," he said with one of the most genuine smiles I've ever seen. A short while later, I reached the lab. By then the sun was starting to set. Kurt and Martha Connors were already there. I showed them my notebook with the design I had in mind. They flipped through the pages, looking intrigued. "How long did it take you to come up with all this?" Kurt asked, looking impressed. Well, maybe a couple days," I said. "Is it any good?" "It's fantastic," Kurt said. "A few details could use some fine-tuning, but overall, good job." "Gee, thanks, Doc," I said sheepishly. He cleared his throat. "Well, if we hurry," he spoke, "then we might be able to put together a functioning set of these chips in a few days." "Can't we get it done quicker?" I asked. "We only have I looked at the time, 27 hours left." Kurt thought about it. "Maybe, but we'd have to cut a few corners," he replied. "Mainly in terms of quantity," Martha said. "We might not be able to make them for the full suit." "That's fine," I said. "If we can cover the torso alone, then that's still more than functional." "I suppose," Martha said, stroking her chin. "Well, let's get to work then," Kurt said. He went to a storage room next to the lab and came back a moment later holding a box filled with parts. "Peter, there's another one back there. Could you please bring it for me?" he asked. I nodded and went to do what he asked as Kurt opened the first box and started working. Kurt, Martha and I worked at the lab almost till midnight. I had made sure to call Uncle Ben and let him know I might be late. When he had asked why, I just told him it was lab-related, which was technically true. All things considered, the Connors and I made pretty good progress that night. The first two pieces were complete. They were thin metallic disc with a diameter of about a penny. They worked well, too, designed to absorb all impact within a roughly 4-inch radius per piece, though admittedly there was a limit to how far we could go with the testing in the lab. Kurt and Martha hadn't had the exact parts needed to make the discs, obviously. The boxes we had brought in had been full of discarded machinery, spare pieces, odd bits and stuff like that. Apart from being hella smart, they both turned out to be pretty decent with tech as well. And my Peter's big butt brain also proved quite useful. We put together the necessary parts by stripping down old gadgets and using their pieces. It took quite a bit of trial and error, but we were able to put together a working model after several hours of hard work. We were only able to complete 2 pieces that night, but that was okay. We had the formula figured out now. The remaining could be made a lot faster. Unfortunately, school was a thing, and I still had to attend. Third PRD was biology, and the teacher, Mr. Danton, handed us the results of yesterday's surprise test. I got a B+, which took me by surprise. It was a good grade, sure, but it was the lowest I had gotten in my time as Peter Parker. Maybe it was because I had been rather preoccupied with other matters yesterday, but still, I had made some pretty dumb mistakes in the test. You, Goblin. I noticed Gwen to my right leaning over to try and get a look at my score. I flipped the paper over so she wouldn't see, but judging by the satisfied smirk on her face, it had been too late. She herself had gotten an A+. We were usually neck and neck, but for the last couple of weeks I had managed to get better scores than her on most tests and homework assignments. And she had not been happy about that. Oh, I could almost hear her gloating already. She jogged over to me after class as I opened my locker. "Peter," she said, a grin plastered on her face. "Peter." "Ah, Christ," I said. I knew what she was here for. I fished out a 50-cent piece from my pocket and tossed it to her. "Happy, you nerd?" "Very much so," she said, grinning as she caught it. Oh yeah, there had been a bet. Turns out Gwen had been really salty over me getting better grades. So, to mess with her, I challenged her to a bet that whoever gets the better score in the next test or assignment gets 50 cents. Not exactly high stakes, and I had been pretty confident that I would beat her again, but then the other night's events happened, yeah. You, Goblin. I got my stuff and made my way to English class, passing Liz along the way who was chatting with a friend next to her locker. "Hey, Petey," she said brightly. "Hey, Liz, what's up?" "Linus," she squeaked. "Huh. I got an A- on the biology test." "Oh," I said. "Wow, that's great news, good job, Liz. Wouldn't have done it without you." Maybe it would have been a bit damaging to my ego that Liz Allen of all people had gotten a better score than me, but then again, I had been, more or less, the main reason she did well. So, I see this as an absolute win. Remembering that we had a study session later that night, which conflicted with my other commitments as Spider-Man, I said, by the way, Liz, I'm gonna be a bit busy tonight, so do you mind if we cancel tonight's session?" "Oh sure. Go ahead, I don't mind," Liz replied. "Great. Thanks for understanding." "Sure," she said. "And thanks a lot for helping me out with studies." She leaned forward, hesitated for a fraction of a second, then gave me a quick peck on the cheek. "Okay," I said, aware of the fact that I was blushing slightly. "You know what? This tutorship thing ain't so bad after all." She let out a small laugh at that. "See you around, Petey," she said as she walked away to join her friend, whose jaw had dropped to the floor. "Oh no, you did not just give that nerd a kiss, Liz," she exclaimed. I watched them walk away arguing, before remembering I needed to be in class as well. After school let out, I went to Kurt Connor's lab at Columbia University. While I had been stuck in school, the Connors had made about 7 of the little pieces, bringing the total count up to 9. A couple more would probably enough to cover the upper body, which is where most of the goblins' attacks will be directed anyway. "We've tested them individually," Martha said. "They absorb and release the energy well. We're not 100% sure as to what the maximum amount they can store is, but they can probably handle a fair bit. Just remember, don't store up too much energy, just to be safe. It might end up breaking the discs or maybe even the suit. After all, there's still a rough model." "Got it? Thanks a lot for the help, guys," I said. "Don't mention it, Peter," Kurt said. "Now, we need to make just a couple more and install them into the suit. I'll do that bit myself. You two have done a lot already. You're probably tired." To protest but eventually gave in and I got to work. According to my designs, 4 of them would be installed in the front of the torso, 4 in the back, 1 in each hand, and 1 in the mask. So, 11 in all, meaning I needed to make 2 more. It took me a while, but I managed to get it done, and all without a single electrocution accident. The discs were to be fitted on the inside of the suit. That part was easy enough. Hooking them up to the suit's central system, so that they could actually function in accordance with the suit, would be trickier. By the time I finished, it was starting to get dark, so I headed out into the city. Taking down the goblin was my #1 priority. After that, I'd need to find the formula as well. The best way to do that would be to defeat the goblin and get answers out of him. It wasn't a guaranteed success, but it was worth a shot. The upgrade to the suit would help me out a lot, especially since he would be chucking those pumpkin bombs at me. After a while of web-slinging through the city, I dropped by the building where I had first fought the goblin, close to the East River. He had said he'd be waiting for me there when the time was up, so I decided to stake out the place. I hung back at a nearby rooftop that gave me a good view of the place. About 40 minutes left till Goblin's deadline. Christ, really? That long? As I waited, I got a call from Harry. "Hey, Harry, what's up?" I asked as I picked it up. "Hey, Pete," Harry replied. "Listen, are you busy right now? My dad's holding a fancy dinner party in a bit, and there's really no reason for me to stick around. Can I hang out with you?" We could watch Revenge of the Sith, it's being played in theaters right now. Wait, really? Yeah, really. Ugh, it's honestly tempting, dude, but I trailed off, trying to think of an excuse for why I wouldn't want to watch one of my favorite movies in theaters again. I promised Uncle Ben that I'd help him paint the kitchen tonight. Okay, well, I'll figure something out, see ya, and he hung up. Oh, what wouldn't I give to be watching Revenge of the Sith in a cinema with my best friend right now, instead of waiting for a supervillain to show up so I could beat him up and interrogate him. You, Goblin. After a few minutes of waiting, I heard voices. I looked around and saw a couple men climb up to the rooftop on the right of mine. They were wearing all black, with jack-o'-lantern masks, and carrying big briefcases with them. They hadn't seen me yet. I'm guessing these guys are reinforcements the Goblin brought along in case I didn't play ball. Looking around, I spotted groups of 2 or 3 goons arriving on some of the buildings surrounding the one where I was supposed to meet the Goblin. The Goblin himself hadn't shown up yet, so I decided to even the playing field a bit in the meantime. I fired shockwebs at the 2 guys on the closest rooftop. Shockwebs would knock them out but wouldn't do any permanent damage, so they were pretty useful. The goons fell down, unconscious but twitching a bit. I opened one of the briefcases they had been carrying, and sure enough, the guns they had used when I had first encountered them a few nights back were inside. Only this time I'm guessing all of the guys had them, rather than just one. They were too destructive for me to use against the other Goblin gang members anyway, so I decided to just stick to shockwebs. I managed to clear out the rooftops without any real noise going off. Most of them never realized what was going on until it was too late. By the time I finished webbing up the unconscious criminals, I noticed a fleck flying around the skyscrapers in the distance. It couldn't be the Human Torch, not bright enough. That meant that it was probably the Goblin, and zooming in on the object confirmed that. Ooh boy. Here we go again. I got into position. The Goblin swooped by and stopped, gazing around and seeing the unconscious henchman. Before he could spot me, I fired 2 weblins at the wings of his glider and pulled myself upwards, tugging the glider down a bit as well. I shot upwards towards him, and landed an uppercut when I got within reach, knocking him off of his glider and landing on it myself. He fell some 50 feet onto a rooftop but got back up immediately. There you are. The Goblin sneered as he got back up. He took out 2 of his pumpkin bombs and threw them at me. I made no effort to try and dodge them, as they would only give me a power-up. They exploded, and I almost fell off the glider but managed to keep both feet on it. I felt a tingling, almost electric sensation that I hadn't felt before. Maybe it was the suit's new upgrades doing their job. I swooped in towards the Goblin, making me realize that the glider was much more difficult to control than it looked. I kicked off at the last second, and punched the Goblin in the face, letting out some of the energy I had stored up. It worked like a charm, and the Goblin went flying back and fell off the side of the rooftop. I landed and walked towards the edge, but my spider sense started tingling. Instinctively, I jumped back just in time to dodge the Goblin soaring up towards me on his glider. The glider automatically goes after its rider if they fall off, and I guess it had gone for the plummeting Goblin rather than me, who was already safely on the ground. I see you've been busy taking out my reinforcements, Spider-Man, the Goblin said. But you're sadly mistaken if you think that was all I brought along. My spider sense went nuts as I felt a threat incoming from behind. I jumped upwards in time to dodge a missile headed towards me. The missile changed direction and shot towards me again. So, it was locked onto me, sheet. I tried to lose it, but it was no good. It hit me square in the back and exploded, sending me flying straight into a building under construction. Even more than that, I had actually felt the explosion hurt a bit, but not too much though. Well, at least I got a power boost from that. I got up and looked out the hole in the wall I had made. The missile had come from what appeared to be a flying jack-o'-lantern in the distance. No, wait, it was a helicopter with the cockpit designed as a jack-o'-lantern. Talk about keeping up with the theme. The Goblin flew over towards me and hovered, some 15 feet away from the building. So, Spider-Man, he said, what have you thought about my generous offer? Gee, I dunno, I said. Does the fact that I took out 24 of your goons and then attacked you answer your question? Very funny. So, you decided to choose the wrong answer, Goblin sneered. Tut, I hoped you'd be a bit more sensible. He quickly threw a pumpkin bomb at me, but I caught it with a web line and flung it back at him. It hit him in the face and exploded, knocking him back. I took the opportunity and jumped at him, landing a right hook and letting out some of the energy from the missile blast, which sent him flying back again, and he fell on top of a building. The chopper fired 2 more missiles, which flew towards me, leaving trails of green smoke behind them. I tried to dodge them, but it was no good. They hit me again. Okay, I really gotta get rid of that DMN chopper. I fired 2 weblins at 2 buildings across the street from each other, then moved as far back as I could, stretching the webs. Then I let go and shot forwards towards the chopper. It fired another rocket at me, which I dodged by inches midair. I crashed through the front windshield of the helicopter right into the seat next the pilot. I punched the guy in the face, knocking him out. Only then did I realize that now there was nobody to pilot the DMN chopper, because I sure as hell couldn't. Oh, and that missile I dodged in midair? Yeah, it was coming back right towards us. I grabbed the unconscious pilot and jumped out the side of the helicopter, just split seconds before the missile made contact and exploded, blowing up the cockpit. After landing on the nearest rooftop, I left the pilot there and turned around. The helicopter, now missing a big portion of its front, started spinning out of control as it plummeted towards the ground. I needed to stop it from crashing into the street, so I jumped and landed down on the street where the chopper would more or less hit. I fired webs at the buildings on both sides, creating sort of nets, stretching from one of my hands to the buildings on that side of the street. Then I joined the 2 nets together into one big spider web and let go. The helicopter slowly got closer meanwhile, and I pulled myself away from there by firing a web line. Gideon, will the webs, hold? I asked. Calculating, affirmative. Oh, thank God. The helicopter hit the webs, causing the webs to bounce a bit, like a trampoline but not as extreme. The chopper stuck to the webs, suspended some 20 feet or so above the ground. The rotor blades managed to cut through 1 or 2 lines of webs, not enough to risk falling, before stopping as well. Ooh. I just stopped a helicopter from falling to a street with pedestrians. A sharp cackling sound off in the distance snapped me back to the matter at hand. I looked around and saw the goblin flying off into the night on his glider. Oh, hell no! I began swinging after him. I followed him through the city for a few minutes, trying to take aim at him or his glider, but he always moved to took a turn that ruined the aim. Finally, I was able to fire a web line that actually managed to stick to his glider. But before I could actually make use of that in any way, he took a sharp turn right and slashed and cut the web line, sending me flying straight into a building. I crashed through the window into the building, to a collective gasp and a couple shrieks. Looking around, I saw a bunch of people staring at me that I didn't recognize. They were all wearing fancy clothes, so I assumed it was some kind of, I dunno, rich people event or whatever. Although, the interior of the place did look familiar. Then I spotted Norman Osborn in the crowd, looking just as taken aback as everyone else there, and it clicked. I had just been yeeted by the goblin straight into the Osborn residence. And Harry had mentioned that his dad was holding some kind of dinner party or whatever. My spider sense started tingling and I turned around. The goblin flew through the broken window right at me and swung his fist, which I dodged easily. The goblin flew past me, and I fired a web line at his back, flung him around and straight out the window. I tried to grab the glider as it flew after him, but missed just by an inch and it caught the goblin before he could fall. The crowd suddenly erupted into screams and started to run. Spider-Man, what are you doing? Norman Osborn demanded angrily. Gee, what does it look like? I snapped back. I figured it's probably best to take this fight out of the dinner party, I know, genius. But before I could do that, the goblin threw another pumpkin bomb, but not at me, at the crowd of people who were still trying to run. I fired a web line and caught it, and flung it right back at him, but he threw another bomb which collided with the first one, creating a big cloud of green smoke as they both exploded. My spider sense tingled again, and the goblin came flying towards me out of the smoke. This time I swung my fist, but he flew just under it and past me. I turned around and saw him grab Norman Osborn and another lady from the crowd and flew out the window, in the span of barely a second. Holding the 2 hostages, he stopped and turned around midair to face me. You brought this on yourself, Spider-Man, he spat at me. If you had just been intelligent enough to accept my offer, you wouldn't have been in this situation. I didn't bother retorting with a quip. Now wasn't the time for that. I had to come up with something, anything to save Norman Osborn and the other lady from the Goblin. It's a tragedy, Gobby went on. Alas, you heroes and your morals. He let go of them and flew away cackling. I ran out the window and leaped after Norman and the other lady as they fell. They were already much farther below me, and I couldn't catch up to them like this. So I fired 2 Weblins at a balcony far below and yanked myself forwards, giving me a speed boost and allowing me to catch up with Norman Osborn. I grabbed him around the waist and tilted myself right towards the lady and grabbed her as well. It was at this moment that I realized that because I had my arms around 2 people, I couldn't manipulate webs or swing well. Gideon, I said as I plummeted. Any suggestions? Emergency parachutes ready to deploy. Parachute yes. Deploy. I said. Ah, God bless Reed Richards for putting a FING parachute in a Spider-Man suit. The parachutes opened, slowing us down, and we landed safely on the street below. Yes, it was a bit lame that I, the amazing Spider-Man, had to use a FING parachute. But at the end of the day, I had saved 2 people from going splat on the sidewalk, and I guess that's what matters. You guys okay? Yes, thank you, Spider-Man, Norman Osborn said shakily. The lady just nodded weakly, before clasping a hand to her mouth, waddling over to a trash can, and throwing up. Yeesh. Can't exactly blame her though. Then I realized with a sinking feeling in my gut that the goblin had gotten away. I immediately fired a web and started swinging around the buildings, through town, in search of the goblin, but he had disappeared. I know I've said this a million times today, but seriously? You, goblin. I had promised to call Kurt and tell him about everything that went down afterwards, so I told Gideon to call his number as I began web-slinging back home. Peter? What happened? Kurt's anxious voice said. So, Doc, I got good news and bad news, I said. Elsewhere in New York City, in an abandoned subway tunnel in Brooklyn, 2 teenage boys were busy spray painting a wall. One of them, slightly taller and considerably skinnier than his friend, stepped back and looked back at their work. You know, Gank? I think this might be our best one yet, he said proudly. The boy named Gank stepped back as well and took in the sight. Right it is, Miles, he said, fist-bumping his friend. The mural was a large spray painting of Spider-Man in a mid-web swing pose towards the viewer, the sky and buildings in the background bathed in golden sunlight. They had been working on it every evening for the past 3 days. Miles's uncle had shown him this abandoned tunnel a month ago, and since then it had been frequented by Miles, usually accompanied by his uncle or by Gank. It had basically become an art gallery of sorts, with half a dozen murals spray-painted on the walls. No one else ever came down here, making it the perfect place for such activities. Gank looked at his watch. Yeesh, it's almost 10. We should probably head back, Miles. Oh, yeah, Miles replied, still looking at the spray painting. Tonight had been by far their longest session, and they had lost track of time working on it. Yeah, let me just take a few pics, then we'll go. He pulled out his phone and snapped some pictures. Then they both began walking towards the exit when they heard a distant crash. They both stopped and turned around. It had come from the opposite direction, deeper into the tunnel. What was that? Gank asked. I dunno, Miles said. Let's go check it out. What? No, are you crazy? Gank said, trailing after Miles as he started walking towards where the noise had come from. Miles, why do you always have to be so adventurous? It could be dangerous. Dude, relax, Miles said as he continued walking. Yes, relax. After just hearing a mysterious sound in an abandoned subway tunnel at nighttime, Gank said sarcastically. Look, if you have a problem with all this, then go back, Miles said. I'm not asking you to come along. But what if it's something dangerous? I can't let you die, Gank said. How'd I explain all this to your parents? And your dad's a cop. He'd suspect me since I was the only one with you. I'm not gonna die, Gank. Don't be so dramatic, Miles said. We've been down here 1,000 times and nothing's ever happened. Because no one else has ever been down here before. And we've never been down here this late either. Genk hissed at him. It's probably just a homeless guy. Or it could be the lizard, Genk said, grabbing Miles's shoulder and stopping him. Dude, why would the lizard be down here? Miles said, turning around to look at his best friend. Spider-Man took care of him, remember? Like 2 weeks ago? Well, no one actually knows what happened to the lizard. He vanished after that one night. For all we know, he could be lurking around somewhere. Maybe hibernating or something. Hibernating in spring? Yeah, right, Miles scoffed. Genk listened fdash. Genk suddenly clasped a hand to Miles's mouth, eyes wide with fear, and pointed behind Miles. Miles turned around slowly and froze. Maybe 100 feet ahead was a figure in what appeared to be green-colored armor. He was hovering in midair on some kind of glider. The Green Goblin, Miles whispered in fear. Genk nodded and they both slowly backed away. Thankfully the goblin hadn't noticed them. He hadn't been looking their way, but rather at one of the walls. The two teenagers watched him push certain bricks on the wall like some kind of buttons or pressure pads, and a portion of the wall slid to the side, like some kind of doorway, and the goblin went through it. When the goblin had entered what was presumably his lair and the wall had sealed up behind them, Miles and Genk let out a collective sigh of relief. That was the Green Goblin, Genk stammered. The guy who fought Spider-Man a few nights ago. I know who he is, Miles said, sweating a bit now. Come on, we gotta get out of here. Well, the good news is, I said as I swung my way back home. I could hear police sirens all over the city. Guess they were busy after the whole goblin mess. The upgrades work like a charm. And the bad news? Curt Connors asked. Goblin got away, I said with a sigh. I had been so close to getting him, but wait, hold on a sec. Spider-Man. Spider-Man, help, a voice below cried out. I'll call you back in a minute, Doc, I said and hung up. I swooped down to the street, which was empty save for two teenage boys, maybe a couple years younger than me. All right, I'm here, I said as I landed. Everything okay? For someone who had just called out a superhero for help, they seemed relatively calm, though perhaps a bit nervous. Yeah, everything's okay. Well, sorta. We have to show you something. It's urgent, one of them said. What is it? I asked. I was a bit suspicious at first, but my suspicions pretty much went away when I saw who these two kids were on Gideon's facial recognition. Miles Morales and Genk Lee. Holy shit. How had I not recognized them? They looked exactly like their PS4 video game versions. Also, what did they want to show me? And had Miles been bit by the spider yet or not? If he had already been bit, then that's a bit of a problem. Usually, Peter had been Spider-Man for at least a few years by the time Miles shows up. I've been Spider-Man for barely 2 months and I do not have the necessary experience to train Miles beyond the very basics. It's about the Green Goblin. We found his hideout. Miles said. You what? I said, completely taken aback. How did you find it? They explained what they had been doing and how. They had found the hideout. After telling me where it was, I said, okay, well thanks for telling me. You guys should probably go home now. And, did you call the police? No, Genk said, suddenly realizing this. They probably wouldn't have believed us, Miles interjected. And even if they did, we couldn't just show them a blank wall and tell them to blow it up to see what may or may not be on the other side. In all honesty, I was a bit glad that they hadn't. If Curt Connors' formula was stashed at the Goblin's hideout, then police involvement would be very tricky. The formula was something that must never come to light, because the slightest investigation would be enough to figure out where it came from, and someone would put 2 and 2 together and realize that Curt may have been the lizard. Needless to say, that would screw him over big time, consequences ranging anywhere between losing his job to losing his job and going to prison. Maybe he deserves it. Heck, he himself seems to think he deserves punishment for his actions. But that was a whole other rabbit hole, and personally I wasn't gonna risk anyone finding out that Dr. Connors was the lizard. He'd helped me out a lot already and he seemed genuinely remorseful for what he did. Plus, it would do no good whatsoever if he got sent off to jail or whatever. Also, if I hadn't been a dumbass and acted in time, This whole mess would never have happened to begin with. Okay, you guys should head home now, I'll take care of the goblin, I said. Wait, we're coming with you. Miles said. Wait, we are? Genk said. Absolutely not, I said. It could get messy down there and I don't want you guys to get hurt. No, I meant, it's a specific wall, Miles clarified. We know which one it is, so we'll just show you and then leave. No, I'll manage, I said. They might remember which specific wall it was behind, but my suit could see through walls, so I'd be fine. Okay, sure, Miles said. Okay, well you two go home now, I said. I'll take care of the goblin. You know what? This night may not be a big turd pile after all. I'd still rather be watching Revenge of the Sith though.